it's don't think it's an enterprise. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey guys, it's your legal bestie attorney Symone. I apologize for that delay. There we go. Move this out the way. Hold on, move this out the way. There we go. That's a little bit better. You guys, the verdict, the jury has claimed that they have reached a verdict on some of the counts. Get in here. Get in here. Where is my gavel and my Astroglide? Hold on, guys. Where? Somebody, did you see what said the Astroglide? I'm at my homegirl's house. Did I put it over there? Hold on, y'all. Come on in here. Say where you're watching from while I get the gavel. I have to get the gavel, y'all. You got to break this down. Hold on. I need the Astroglide. I can't continue without it. Let me see where you're viewing us from. Come on in here. Come on in here. Yes. Come on in here, guys. The verdict. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Let me see it. It's not my bag. I had to fold it out. Oh, here. I'm going to do the gavel. Oh, well, the Astroglide will be the gavel. Hold on. See if I put it in here. I don't see it. Okay. Sorry, guys. We got it. We are coming on in here. Listen, I got to read this off for you. And here's the thing. Earlier today, I was trying to give you guys an update, but so much was happening. And I couldn't do it all at once. All right. So let's start with, so what we've got now is we have hit that like as you come on in, guys. Hit that like. Okay. I got it, guys. I got to update you. Here we go. So they have what's called a split verdict. A partial verdict is what it's called. I do not want that one. Hold on, I'm going to share with you and explain to you what that means, where we're at. And I just wanted to say, y'all, I predicted this. When we talked about this, I think it was yesterday when I gave my analysis, people asked me, how long do I think a verdict would take? I specifically said, remember I told y'all, it's a holiday. The holiday is going to impact it. So I told y'all, I said, I thought that they would come back they would come back either today, which is Tuesday, or Wednesday, and say, we're stuck. We can't agree. Didn't I tell y'all that? I wish if I had more time, I'd pull up the clip. Just trust me. The last video, I specifically said they can't agree. They're hung, right? And that the judge would tell them to do what? Go back and try again. Well, that is what is happening. Let's break down what are the counts that they feel that they've reached a partial verdict on, and which ones haven't they? Said it would take 2 weeks. I thought it would do a week, but because we have this holiday, right? So Thursday and Friday is off. I knew that these people were sick of each other and that they would try today or tomorrow to come back and be like, hey, we can't agree. By them coming back today, Tuesday, to say we cannot agree, we know the judge has to tell you at least one time to go back and try again. So now they've satisfied that one. And so if they try again tomorrow, we'll see. But if they can't agree again, the judge can make a determination then. Now, I want to, okay, so let me just give you what happened. The jury has been dismissed for a day, but the jury sends a note advising it's going to keep deliberating tomorrow. They're going to start at 9 a.m. But there have been a bunch of notes. Okay, hold on. I'm going to explain where we're at. Doesn't surprise me at all. We're going to start with what all that went on earlier today. So just briefly, yesterday was big because yesterday there were 3 notes. The first note was a note stating that they did not believe, the forewoman did not believe that juror number 25 would follow the judge's instructions. instructions. I want to make sure I say it specifically how that this all matters. Specifically give you the exact wording of that first and second note, because that explains where we're at today and what's going to happen. So what's going to happen right now is jury was sent home. They got to come back tomorrow and keep on trying. But I want to hear your thoughts, your predictions. And I'm going to give you mine on how I think they're stuck, in which way. Because it said they have come to an agreement on 4, but cannot agree on the RICO. On the RICO. Hold on. I'm scrolling. Y'all, it's a whole bunch of stuff on here. I'm scrolling back to the top of the day. All right. Hold on. I got to tell you the note part specifically. It's very important. Hold on, let me get this. Let me pull it up. That specific note. First jury note. Diddy trial. This is where AI needs to come in. Yeah, there we go. We got it. Hold on. I got it. The jury's reached. Okay, we got the partials. We know that. But the first note was basically them saying that juror number 25 can't follow the instructions. Specifically, I got it here. It says, we are concerned that juror number 25, go ahead, hit that like as you join. I'll share it here. The juror number 25 cannot follow instructions. Y'all, this is critical. And it's important to note the numbers of the jurors, because different jurors are causing different challenges. One of the jurors is having trouble following instructions. We are concerned juror 25 cannot follow your honor's instruction. That we means not just the 4 woman or 4 man. 4 man is the man. It means there was multiple. Juror 25 has a PhD, it says, in molecular biology and works as a scientist. During the jury selection, he also said he's a veterinarian and lives in Manhattan with his partner. So he's probably a little bit gay. He told the judge he is vaguely aware of the allegations against Combs based on news reports. The judge is now giving each side 10 minutes to hash out a response to the note. They did that. Okay, right? So also keep this in mind. If he's a little gay, he might be a little freaky too. He might do a little freaky. No. You are not going to criminalize what I do in the bedroom. Does that make sense? Yeah, you're not going to criminalize what I do in the bedroom. So we don't know which way that the gentleman was leaning. But my thought is that this guy, because it said he wouldn't follow the judge's instructions. What were the judge's instructions? The judge's instructions are to read through the jury charge and go through the jury charge to apply the law to the facts. So that means he was not trying to read the instructions and apply to the law. I don't care what anything says. I'm voting, and said however he wanted to vote. That would be an example of not following the instructions. But I believe that, okay, so then we had the second jury note. This is important. Hold on. I know you're like, get to it. This is getting to it. The second jury note, that one took me. I want to say second. Let me put second note. Second note. Oh, it's rolling up. Second. Come on. Second victim. We need that second note. All right, the judge is not giving it to me to decide. Okay, then there was a second note that was about distribution. All right, in their third note of the day, that's right, it was the third note. That's right. The third note, the jury asked whether a person, this is so important, guys, whether a person asking for drugs before receiving them changes how the jury should consider the narcotics distribution allegation. More specifically, it says in the third note, the jury asked whether a person asking for drugs before getting them, if that makes a difference. The note specifically referenced page 36 of the instructions and read, the elements of distribution or possessing with intent to distribute a controlled substance are 1. The conspirator distributed a controlled substance or possessed a controlled substance with intent to distribute it. 2, did so knowingly and intentionally. And 3, the substance was in fact a controlled substance. Yeah, we know that part. But most specifically, they asked, and this is, it specifically said, the note said, if someone gives you drugs, if you ask for drugs and someone gives them to you, is that distribution? That was the question. If someone asks you for drugs and you give it to them, is that distribution? So that was the question, right? And it was at the end of the day, so both sides had to leave. When I heard that question, I said, oh, we gonna have a jury nullification problem. Let me explain what I mean. Because drug distribution, because that question, right? That specific question of if you ask for drugs and someone hands that to you, is that distribution? That sounds to me like someone, first of all, it's a great question, right? But it also sounds to me sharing my Adderall with somebody. I don't do that. That's illegal. But that could be someone else saying, oh, I got cramps real bad. And will you share with me your prescription ibuprofen, right? Therefore, if a juror feels that the way the law is written is so unfair that they don't want to follow it, that's how you may get what's called juror nullification. Juror nullification, meaning they know, I understand that they're not narcotics. I know, I get you, hon. I get you, hibiscus. I appreciate your, but what I'm saying is, what happens is if a juror feels that a law is so stupid, it shouldn't even be a law, you could get what's called juror nullification. Juror nullification is when a juror knows good and well the law says they're supposed to do this and vote in a certain way, and they just say, I don't want to. They say, I don't want to. So, right, I hear you. I hear you that ibuprofen is legal and cocaine isn't. But Adderall is a controlled 3 substance. So stick with the Adderall. If someone asks me, hey, girl, I really need to study for this bar exam, can I have half of one of your pills? And I give it to them, is that a crime? What I'm just telling you is the thought process behind that question, behind that note, was someone who felt there's overreaching. Do you follow me? Overreaching. Remember, that was part of the defense's goal, is to show the government had overreached, in charging this in the first place. So if a juror believes there's overreaching, that may be, yes, it's a partial verdict. And what I'm gonna get into that. I promise. All right. So we're starting there. So I'm just telling you, when I saw that, I said, oh Lord, we got problems. All right. Thank you, Keisha, so much for the super chat. I want to make sure I get, hold on. I missed your question. Hold on. Thank you for the super chat. You've written, Symone, you have your hot girl dress on today. I've been waiting for you to hop on. Thank you. Yeah, today I had a lot of personal problems. All right. Next up, I want to make sure I get your questions. Symone, you're the best. I was waiting for your update. Thank you. JP, thank you. Ooh, I needed $10. Listen, JP is writing. They mad in the comments. Rico, if I'm guessing, guilty on Cassie trafficking. Hold on. Guilty on both Mann Act charges. But if that boy beats the trafficking, sheesh. Take that. Well, thank you, JP. Symone, if it's a partial verdict, what happens? Okay, so this is exactly what I predicted, right, the other day. Partial verdict means this. It means the ones they can agree on, stick. The ones they cannot, specifically, let's say it is a not guilty for the 4 counts that they're saying they are able to agree. If those are not guilties, and the last one is a hung, shake that Astroglide. That means it's not guilty, and they're not going to retry him. They're probably not going to retry him for Rico, because Rico is the one other charge they can't agree. Now, I want to be clear, though, in the language. The language is this. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. The language is an agreement on 4 counts. That doesn't mean a guilty, and it doesn't mean a not guilty. It just means an agreement. When I first heard it, I thought, oh, hell. I thought it was a not guilty on 4 counts is what I initially thought. And I was concerned about that because one of those counts, of course, is Jane. And I had trouble believing 12 of those people, those specific people, would find him guilty of Jane. So when I heard the 4 agreement, my assumption was, oh, must be not guilty. But we're going to keep track. Hold on. Keep going here. I'm going to drop this. And hold on. I'm going to pin this to the chat. Let's see. Wait a minute. But we need to be clear on, but you got to take this into consideration with the notes. Okay. You got to look at the notes so that we can get an idea of how they are leaning. It says, I think it would, what does Afra say? I think it would be more like if you made a legal assistant work at your house and office 7 days a week. Oh, you're talking about the forced labor. Okay. Y'all talking about something else. All right. So here, I'm going to pin this. All right, there we go. All right. So here on ABC, they are breaking down the update. So I just want to make sure we got the third note. We just talked about that. That was the distribution charge. That definitely helped realize we had a problem. Right. So then it says in the third note of the day, asking whether receiving drugs. We're going into that. Hold on. Here's the problem. The question of is receiving drugs specifically, is receiving drugs distribution is what they wanted to know. It said Maureen Comey argued that the judge should tell the jury that someone asking for drugs does not have an impact on how the jury should view the allegations. Girl, what? Girl, what? So what I think the jury is caught up on is levels of consent and willingness. Does that make sense? Should should that be distribution? Clearly somebody thinks it's unfair. And Maureen is saying, oh, you shouldn't think about that. That's not how you got to word things. That's what happens when your lead is not a person of the jury. That's what, like, Maureen can't relate to the average deli worker. And unfortunately, Maureen, we can see here. So if you tell someone who's asking me, if I share the drugs, if I ask you for substances, you give it to me, and you say, oh, well, you shouldn't think about that. But you're asking because I'm thinking about it. I'm asking because I'm trying to understand. So she's saying the judge should tell the jury someone asking for drugs does not have an impact on how the jury should view the allegations. Whether or not the drugs were requested, she argued, doesn't change that the actions amount to illegal distribution. I totally get that. That is true. But you can word it that way, but the way it was initially worded, right, which was someone asking for drugs does not impact how the jury should view the allegations. No, you got to say in real people speak, hey, listen, it's a lot of crackheads out here asking for crack, right? At the end of the day, if you give that crackhead some crack, you're distributing crack. You're a crack distributor at that moment. It said Comey previously argued that the jury can convict Combs, this is important, on racketeering based on 2 instances of narcotics distribution. This is why distribution was so important. Remember, they really only have, I used to say it was like, initially I said under RICO, there was like 3 clear-cut charges. I said it was the bribery, it was the prostitution, tampering with witnesses, and I said that it was the distribution. But the distribution, but the tampering with witnesses is out of the door because it's not for Cassie. The tampering with witnesses is actually for Mia and Jane, and those facts were stupid. So I'm going to ignore it. I don't think that was strong after all. But the distribution, the problem with the distribution is what we alone could be sufficient to find him guilty for RICO. Y'all, if they can't find him guilty for RICO, that means they haven't found 2 instances of nothing. Well, we already know bribery was one of them. Let me look at y'all in the face when we're talking about that. We already know bribery was one of them, correct? Unless there is someone literally on that jury who feels like, oh, it wasn't bribery. They were paying to make the publicity go away. Well, if you have somebody out there that really believes that they were not paying $100,000 to make that tape disappear, right? Then the problem is, okay, oh, someone said maybe they don't think it's an enterprise. That could be too, love. That could be too. The problem is if you can't get the bribery, you ain't going to get nothing else. And again, it's only 2. There was only 1 bribe, so bribery can only be 1. But that also means they're not agreeing on that prostitution charge, right? They're not agreeing on the prostitution because the prostitution would be the second one. If you got the bribery, you got the prostitution. Or if you have two prostitution acts, it can be perhaps they don't believe it is an enterprise. That could be. Now, if the issue is the enterprise, then he could have also been found guilty on the Mann Act charges of not guilty on all of them, because that means they're not even finding him guilty of the hookers. The hookers. That was pretty easy. Hold on. We got some super chats here. I don't want to forget about you guys. I really appreciate you guys. Hit that subscribe. Partial verdict reached. Correct. Maybe it's don't think as informed. I really appreciate it. Awesome job. I learned a lot from you. Oh, we're not done. There's gonna be more cases, y'all. Y'all have to let me know which additional ones you want me to cover next. How are they able to convict when nobody went to the police and there are no police reports over any of these years? I think that is phenomenal. Oh, hold on. I got a friend that's right there. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna see if I can get him to join us. Let me call him right now. I'm gonna see if I can get. This is my boy James, who writes for Essence. Hold on. Let me see if I can get him. Hey, boo. Hold on. I'm on my channel. Could you just click the link? You don't have to show your beautiful face. Could you just tell me how it went? My viewers would love to hear you. Okay. I'm texting it to you right now. Y'all, we've got somebody live from the courthouse. Here we go. I'm texting it. It's going to be through StreamYard. When you click, since you have an iPhone, you might have to use stupid Safari, but you don't have to turn your video on if you don't want to. You can if you want to. All right. We want to know, baby. All right. You got the link. There we go. He's coming. He's coming on. This is James from Essence Magazine. He just texted me saying court and activewear. Okay, got it. All right, bye. Thank you. All right, he's going to be joining us. Here's the thing. My concern is if you can't agree on RICO, that means you don't think two things. He made it go away on one of them. Hey there, James, when Cassie wasn't able to do it. Hey, okay, y'all. James is a writer. Tell me about all the places you write for. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, so hey everybody, my name is James R. Sanders, and I am providing coverage for the Sean Combs, U.S. v. Sean Combs trial right now for Essence Magazine, but I've written for magazine.
Oh, think about this. Too. Yes, we're going to link you. We know you're tired, and we are like frantic about this. First of all, the judge's demeanor. What was it like?
So today, Judge Aaron Subramanian was pretty low key whenever the jury is in the room. You can tell that he's a judge's judge, and let's not forget that he did clerk for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So,
that's a very fair person, Ruth Bader. Yes. She was very, that's the first female to be on the Supreme Court. Somebody said he was mad. Was he mad at the jurors?
So he wasn't angry with the jurors, but earlier today, he did have a back and forth with the defense, specifically Mark Agnifilio. And of course, he was quite annoyed earlier with him. So
what did Mark do this time?
So there was a little bit of a back and forth having to do with the note that the jury wrote in wanted to some additional explanation about what it meant and how they should deliberate a towel. And Mark Agnifilio wanted to just kind of leave it as is, based on the grounds of just kind of branding the jury as highly intelligent and just essentially saying that they could handle
figure it
on
out.
their own. Right. The prosecution wanted to expand more on Sean Combs's history, adding some additional editorial to kind of brand him as more so of a criminal and a criminal enterprise additionally. Well, the judge kind of landed in the middle of both of their asks, essentially.
Wow.
But prior to that, there was more of a back and forth between Agnifilio and Judge Subramanian, and it was pretty intense for a minute there. And then prior to going back and forth, in the midst of going back and forth with Judge Subramanian, another judge from Shapiro's law firm, I believe he's 32, I can't remember his name, but he's also on Team Combs, his defense. He jumped in and kind of left the judge speechless because he was able to provide quite a few case laws to kind of back up his argument.
Oh, I think that's Driscoll.
That's exactly who.
That's Driscoll. Okay, y'all. So this guy Driscoll, he's a real deal. He's an attorney that was added to the team. He's like straight up just a nerd. He is the researcher. He finds the case law like immediately to prove up whatever point is necessary. So it sounds like he found case law that would define distribution in a particular way.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. What actually happened specifically to your point was Judge Subramanian said, well, can you find me some case law? And can you tell me what page? And Driscoll said, yes, I can. Such and such, B, such and such, page 37, line 11. And Judge Subramanian was kind of quiet for a minute. And he said, okay, well, be that as it may, I'm still not doing it. And Driscoll said, okay, well, can you let the record show we still want it on record?
Okay, wait. So then what did he end up saying?
He ended up, again, having it be somewhere in the middle of Agnifilio's ask and Maureen Comey's
Got it.
ask.
Yeah, I think I see it here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go through that. But y'all, basically, here's why that's important. See, Mark wanted to leave it as it was. Why? Because any confusion goes in favor of reasonable doubt. In other words, when that person had asked, if someone asks you for drugs and you give it to them, is that distribution? That is a person who literally sees themselves in Diddy. They see themselves in the crime. They do not want, they see that as something that an offense anyone could inadvertently commit, and they're leaning towards not wanting to convict on something that someone could so easily or mistakenly do, is how I assess this as an attorney. I was like, and furthermore, the reason Mark wants to kind of leave it as it is the less you clarify, the more confusing. Hold on. Just want to fix that. And then would you say at the end, what was the judge's instruction? Kind of what was the, there we go.
So there was an interesting back and forth also, again, of course, towards the end, where the defense wanted to make sure there was no pressure for the jury to feel like they had to rush the verdict on count one, which of course is the only verdict that they weren't able to decide on, because by now obviously we know that they are undecided on verdict or on count one, which is the only count that they could not find a decision on. They're undecided on. And the defense wanted to make sure that they didn't feel pressure to kind of feel rushed
Okay,
because
that's fair.
obviously, if there's pressure, the defense was concerned that they might not vote in their favor.
Of
Who's to
course
say
not.
that they would vote in their favor anyway, but they'd rather play it safe than sorry. So,
Fair enough.
Judge Aaron Submarinian wanted to let them know in the middle of the day that, hey, you guys, uh, if you don't come up with a decision today, we're gonna, push you to vote for the third because we want to get this done by the 4th of July and pressure, pressure, pressure. And essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but Mark Agnifilio, respectfully, I believe in his way, requested that the jury not be told today that they'd have the option to vote or deliberate, that is, on July the 4th. On July the 3rd, the Southern District of New York courtroom is going to be closed. So they're going to make special allowance for the jury to come into the courtroom on July the 3rd. Now, it's going to be just an option. The jury may decide, well, guess what? We don't want to be here on July the 3rd. So
Hmm.
y'all can make all the special allowance that you want. You'll be allowed by yourselves because on July the 3rd, we don't want to be here. And so we're
Hell
not
no.
coming in. So it's just going to really essentially be an option because regardless, they might still say, hell no, we don't want to go.
Okay, so basically, even though court is supposed to be closed Thursday, they're going to have the option to come on in there.
The option, and the word option obviously is very important because they may opt out.
They're so sick of this, poor things. They are so sick of it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Anything else that we should know or that was interesting did you sit in the courtroom the whole day?
No, absolutely not. I took multiple water breaks, multiple bathroom breaks, multiple go outside and check my phone breaks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's great. Okay, guys.
Bye.
Bye. All right, y'all. I want to read you this note as well. This is important. Okay, in here. Ooh, lordy, lordy. Make it a little better. Lordy, lordy. Somebody said, yeah, James is really awesome. Okay, it says Symone had. Oh, thank you, Keisha. Keisha said, I had my hot girl dress on today. I've been waiting for you to hop on and give the best update. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, wait. We got some more. Hold on. I got another question here. This is what I want to share with you. I'm going to put this on the screen. Make sure you guys can see it as well. I know it's a bit smaller, but I'll make it larger. All right. This is what ABC News is reporting. They said the jury reached a verdict on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are S, trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion for one victim. It's the transportation to engage in prostitution for another, trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion for a second victim, and the transportation to engage in prostitution for a second victim. See, I was saying before that the prostitution was so clear. Let me be very clear. The prostitution that I believe was clear was of the workers that were hired. Here's the distinction. The workers, the guys, that prostitution is covered under the RICO prostitution across state lines charge. However, the prostitution charge, as it is here, for the other two standalones that are Cassie and Jane, again, if you don't feel that any of them were coerced to do anything, then that's where I believe a jury may see, no, that's how they could get out of the prostitution charge. So in other words, looking at Cassie and Jane as the prostitutes is going to could end up with a not guilty. But if the question is, were the male hookers the prostitutes? Remember, I kept calling them male hookers. Then I think that answer is very clear. But apparently not here, because there was at least two sets of hookers. And if you only need two offenses under RICO and they can't come to an agreement, it says they're unable to reach, sorry, this is New York, it's so loud, a verdict on the racketeering count at the consent of both sides. The judge said he plans to instruct the jury to, quote, continue deliberating. according to a note to the note from the jury, it says there are, quote, unpersuadable on the racketeering charge. Now tomorrow, wait a minute. Yeah. Here we go. I want to see your thoughts on that racketeering charge. Here we are. I'll make this a little bit smaller. This was fast. But I told you guys, they were going to come back hung. I said that yesterday. I cannot see not guilty on the 4. Let me see. Okay, I want to make sure I answer this. So if it's a hung, does that mean mistrial? Yes. Hung and mistrial are basically the same impact, which means he could be retried, but it does not mean, not guilty. And if there's a verdict on the other 4, whatever that verdict is stands. So let's say he gets not guilty on the other 4, hung on the last charge. The government can choose to just come back and only charge him for RICO because he was found not guilty on the others. But someone says, Kim says, I cannot see not guilty on the 4 and hung on RICO. I just can't see it. We got some starred comments. I want to make sure. Get this away from me. I want to make sure that I cover. Yeah, that was a hard one too. Kim is saying, Keisha, this is bad. Are protections offered to witnesses? No, thank you for that super chat. It says, I looked at the jury form and it could be the bribery and distribution charges that they're hung up on. They could have agreed not guilty on the other acts 2 through 5. Good point. Because here's the thing about the jury form. Hold on, let me go grab it. I will grab that for you. I'll just put it up from social media. Wait a minute. I want to pull up that jury form for you guys. Because the thing with the RICO is they do have to, previously I said they didn't have to agree on which of the offenses had been committed as long as each person found 2. That was incorrect. They do have to agree. However, they could agree that they do have to agree. All 12 had to agree on which of the 2 occurred, but they can agree that one of them happened twice. I just feel like jury form. There we go. I just feel like the same person who if there was a juror who felt they did not feel comfortable charging him with distribution of narcotics when someone asked for a pill and he gave it to them, that same juror would have trouble convicting him of RICO if the only thing they could agree on was multiple sets of hookers. What the hell? Sorry, guys. That's my gum. All right, I found the jury form. Somebody got the jury. I don't want to see how y'all would fill out the form. Hold on. Let me get this form. I want to show it on screen. Here we go. I know one of y'all would come through. Okay, we're going to share this tab. All right, now I got the jury form. I'm going to add this to the live so that we can see what we're looking at together. Cambry wrote, I looked at the jury form and it could be that bribery and distribution charges that they are hung up on. So let's see, for count 1, of course, it just says, how do you find the defendant? Not guilty and guilty. And then it says, if and only if you find that the defendant committed this offense, then you have to tell them which one you agree on. And number 1 was kidnapping. Below that was arson. Sorry, my vision is really bad. Arson, bribery, which would have been the 3rd one under there, involving the witness tampering. No, they're not going to get that one. Forced labor, they're definitely not going to get that one. And then trafficking, probably, I don't know. They're not agreeing because some people feel that these people are voluntarily doing things. That's what that language, when that question was, if someone asks you for drugs and you give them to them, is that distribution? That person is struggling with the fact that people seeing certain criminal acts as voluntary. That's what that language means. As an attorney, who's done this for decades, I'm telling you, that's where their mind as a juror is hung up. And then, of course, there's acts involving drug distribution. And then if and only if you found them guilty of count one, did the pattern of racketeering include X trafficking? Cassie, you could say no. If and only if, did it count one, did the pattern include trafficking of Jane? So what's interesting here involved trafficking and then transportation for for prostitution. So what we're, and this is the whole jury form that's relevant, right? There you go. And then the other two are the Mann Act, transportation. Nobody cares. Literally at this point, like nobody cares about, it's almost like the stuff for Jane, I think they're seeing is very consensual. Is there not enough to convince the jury that the money comes from the business? Maybe that's why they can't determine racketeering. Listen, thank you, Jameson. That could be Jameson. Kim's motivation station. See, here's what happens with Jameson. I'm glad you said that. With juror nullification, which is basically a juror has decided the law is stupid, the government is stupid, these people are stupid, I don't want to convict this person. They might do something like that. They might say, all right, well, yeah, maybe he did bribe people, but there's no real enterprise. The enterprise doesn't count. They'll find like any smaller caveat. So that also could be part of the issue. Yep. Thank you, Love Mara. Maybe they don't think it's an enterprise. All right. And then we've got, hold on. Oh, yes. Thank you so much for the super chat, lady. All right. Let's make sure I got it. Oh, goodness. Oh, my gosh. Nikki. Oh, my God. You gave me $100. Oh, no, I really don't have to sell any cooch. I really appreciate it. I was open to it. It says, hey, Symone, I hope this helps with dinner. Please, when you get a chance, let us know your opinion on TMZ's stumbling across Gina during the time of the verdict. Yeah, we're going to talk about this now as we're processing it all. That wasn't no stumble. That wasn't a stumble. That was a flex. That was a flex. That I feel like that was a show of Diddy's strength. That this girl done been hiding all this time and now she done popped up. And here's the thing. Generally, you do not charge a S trafficking victim, which they're claiming that she was. You don't charge her of a crime. I'm gonna put this up. You don't charge her of a crime even after the fact, a case like this. Now, they could hold her in contempt. And I think that's what they need to do. They need to make an example of her. Put that little girl in contempt. Because where did they find her? At Whole Foods or something stupid? Yeah, she's playing too much. Sorry, she's playing with the law. She's playing with other people's lives. Because also, when you think about the facts, now I see why the prosecution probably thought Jane wouldn't be as bad as Jane was, as factually, is because Jane was supposed to be part of the trifecta. It was supposed to start with Cassie's story, Gina's story next, right? Because Gina was going to talk about getting stomped out, being pregnant, him making her lose a baby, all of that. And then they would be able to conclude with Jane's weird, like odd, ridiculous, whatever word you want to use for the, the financial coercion and the different stuff that she dealt with, that Jane dealt with, right? But Jane wouldn't have looked so crazy if you had somebody stomped out, had a baby stomped out of him or whatever she had, beat down as well. Because Jane only got in one fight with him, and that was the one she started. So I say this to say I can see how the prosecution thought that it would be a lot easier to get the trafficking, to show the trafficking, because you'd be able to show more violence. Here, all you have is Cassie, and then it seems like this big gap where all of a sudden in 2021, he got his act together. And yeah, he was a bad boyfriend. However, he just stopped whooping up on women. That's why Gina is needed. And Gina needs to go to jail, at least for contempt. Just hold her in there for a little while. How much time can Diddy receive if RICO charges are eliminated and he is charged with the other? All right. S trafficking. Thank you so much for that super chat as well. Jazzy, S trafficking is up to life. The prostitution charge, max of 10 years. So if they take RICO off the table, but S trafficking, look, I don't see how he would be found guilty of trafficking if he cannot be found guilty of RICO. I'm not seeing that. Y'all tell me in the chat. So therefore, he would be facing, he'd still be facing life but I don't think they got him on trafficking. If they didn't get him on trafficking, if it was either of the hooker charges, the other two hooker charges that were standalone, that could be up to 10 years. But again, I don't think that they're going to find that those two girlfriends were the prostitutes, because they'll want to see them as being willing participants. That's why they needed to see and look at those freak off transcripts. It says, this is bad. Okay, we went over that. Okay, I looked at the form. Okay, we got that. I want to make sure I answered all of these. Yeah, so this is fascinating. Of all the people. All right, here we go. 49. We got another. Oh, thank you for the question. Stumbling across this. Listen, I want to read off to you, though. Hold on. There is something important, too, as part of this update. The court stated, okay, so yesterday, in the note, right, in the note that asked about distribution and what it meant, the judge responded and said the word distribution means actual, constructive, or attempted transfer to distribute, or attempted transfer, right? So this is the judge trying to help the jury to determine their hypothetical of, if you ask for drugs and someone gives it to you, is that distribution? Now, Maureen Comey wanted the answer to be yes. She literally said yesterday at the end of the day, yes. I said, oh, Lord, if that answer is a straight up yes with no caveat, you're going to get jury nullification, because jurors are going to be like, I don't want to convict on that. Here, though, this is what the judge told them. The judge said the word distribution means actual, constructed, or attempted transfer. To distribute simply means to deliver, to pass, or to hand over something to another person, or to cause it to be delivered, passed on, or handed over. Distribution does not require a sale. That's exactly what they told the jury. Distribution does not require a sale. Okay. And then it said, okay, sorry. Okay. And then it says in the note, if a recipient wants, requests, or asks for controlled substances, and an individual hands over controlled substances to the requester, has the individual who hands over the substances distributed. The defense stated, Mark Agnifilo, he objected to the judge's instructions, saying he doesn't believe that it goes far enough to answer the questions. He says, the court is about to make something that amounts to a mistake, he argued. Can I give Your Honor an example? The judge says no. The judge replied, can you do what I'm asking? The judge denied the defense's request to modify the language in the response, saying that it would, quote, confuse the jury. But Maureen said this is an attempt to confuse the jury. Combs stroked his chin, it said, and looked directly at the judge while the argument played out. When the judge denied the lawyer's request, he stared at Agnifilo. I'm never going to say his right name right. It's over with. It said the structure of the verdict form instructs jurors to only consider the drug offenses and other underlying crimes if and only if they find him guilty of the racketeering. Wait a minute. You only consider the underlying if you find him guilty of the conspiracy. Of racketeering. So it sounds like they're disagreeing on the racketeering of itself. So maybe it could also be that they're disagreeing on that and why they may not have gone down into the other subparts. Hold on, I'm going to confirm this. Now we got another update. He says, okay. Plans to answer the jury's question. In their third note, if a recipient wants or requests a controlled substances, the defense objected and said it doesn't go far enough. Yeah. They wanted the court to say more. Okay, so going up. The jury's got another note. There was a fifth note. And including the note. Okay, we got that fifth note. Hold on. They're done for the day. No verdict. They got a partial verdict. Here's the thing with the partial verdict and sending them home tonight. Anybody could come back and change their minds. They are not sequestered. You think, if my husband came home and told me, and I saw in the news that they've got a partial verdict, I'm going to know. As the wife, tell me, I'm not going to tell nobody. Tell me, and I'm going to try to persuade him one way or the other, if I agree or don't disagree. So these people are going home knowing that they've got a partial agreement. So what I'm saying is tomorrow, that partial agreement, it could weaken, it could change. I don't think so, though, because I think that partial agreement is going to be not guilty on those other charges. It says the judge said he's not taking this partial verdict. Once the lawyers work out the language, the judge is then going to call the jurors into the courtroom tomorrow and instruct them to keep deliberating. Sorry to say. Combs. Yeah. It's a bad rap. Okay, this is the update. Hold on. I'm going to get the CNN update because I trust them more. Oh, Combs whispers to his kids and mom, "I'll be all right. I love you." Apparently his mother was really having a hard time handling it. And we'll get into the racketeering charge. Hold on. The jury's going to continue tomorrow. I told y'all the jury was going to say, keep going. Okay, then it says, "I received your note. You've reached verdicts on counts 2 to 5, but not on 1. I ask that you keep deliberating," right? And then he told them, and to send a note if they wanted to end deliberations. They did that. The judge actually went into the jury room, y'all. He goes in to instruct them. Hold on. Why does it look like this? Lordy. I'm going to get back to questions in a minute. Okay. It says, he tells them to keep deliberating. Okay. He says, "Again, your verdict must be unanimous, but you are not." This is what the judge said to them, that he's going to recite verbatim to them. Okay. To make them keep deliberating. He said he's not going to accept the partial verdict because if he does, that means it is a hung jury and it's too soon. It says, "Again, your verdict must be unanimous, but you are not bound to surrender your honest convictions concerning the effect or weight of the evidence for the mere purpose of returning a verdict or solely because of the opinion of other jurors." If you know me, that's poignant to me because I told you I've done jury duty once, and I'm pretty sure I sent an innocent man to prison for 30 years when I was 21 years old. It says, each of you must make your own decision about the proper outcome of the case. This is what the judge is going to tell them tomorrow. Each of you must make your own decision about the proper outcome of this case based on your consideration of the evidence and your discussions with your fellow jurors. No juror should surrender his or her conscientious beliefs for the purpose of returning a unanimous verdict. That's huge. That's going to get him hung. That line right there, no juror should surrender his or her conscientious beliefs for the purpose of returning a unanimous verdict. It is your duty as jurors to consult with one another and to deliberate with a view to reaching an agreement. Each of you must decide the case for him or herself, but you should do so only after a consideration of the case with your fellow jurors. And you should not hesitate to change an opinion when convinced it is erroneous. Discuss and weigh your respective opinions dispassionately, meaning don't act crazy, without regard to sympathy, without regard to prejudice or favor for either party, and follow my instructions on the law. It's a little high end. You could have said it a little more down to earth than that, Judge. That's what he's going to tell him tomorrow. No. I do have another question for you guys. Listen, I'm going to take some of your questions here too. However, let's keep going. I wanted to say, do you guys, oh, there we go. It says, "Symone, I was thinking that they have at least 2 guilty, but no RICO, which is why they can't agree on number 1. Is the RICO automatic after 2 counts? Or do they find him guilty and still say no to RICO?" Thanks, Mama Doll. Okay, I was thinking that they have at least 2 guilty counts, okay, but no RICO, which is why they can't agree on number 1. Is the RICO automatic after 2 counts? No. The RICO is not automatic after 2 counts. It's if any of the two of the underlying he's found guilty of. But the problem is this: the standalone counts are also the RICO counts. They're under RICO. So follow me here. So the S trafficking and the Mann Act transportation across state lines for prostitution, those are both standalone charges for Cassie and Jane, but they are also underlying charges for RICO where 2 would be sufficient for guilt. That's why I'm saying it's probably not guilty on those 4. because otherwise they should be able to agree on RICO. Wait a minute. Unless, as you guys said, hold on, unless they can't agree on whether it is a enterprise. I think the word enterprise could be off-putting. Which charges? All charges need a unanimous decision, all of them. But here's an important thing to clarify. With the S trafficking, they don't have to agree whether it was fraud, coercion, or force. They just have to agree it was one of those things. So for S trafficking, so for example, S trafficking, one person could be like, oh yeah, I believe that Jane was financially coerced. And another person would say, I don't think she was financially coerced, but I do think that the fraud of him promising her quality time was true fraud, and that's what trafficked her. It doesn't matter. If you pick one of the three, it's good enough. It says, let's use common sense. He must be charged guilty on something is the reason. Okay, let's get this together. Okay, hold on. He must be charged guilty on something is the reason they are hung up on RICO. Oh, okay. Wait. You're smarter than me sometimes, guys. Thank you, jury. K Camp is saying, walk me through that though. You're saying, what I'm saying is they could be hung on the RICO because some people find him guilty of things under RICO and some do not. But I don't think that means that. Now I need help, right? Yeah. Elaborate. Help me there. Someone said, I think it's guilty on 2 charges and not guilty on the other 2. Okay. He can be guilty of counts 2 and 3. Let's look at the form again. All right. We're going to look at this form again. Share. All right. With this form, again, how do you find him guilty or not guilty? And because they have to agree, obviously, if they find him guilty on RICO, they have to agree on which 2 below, at least 2, occurred. So what I'm saying is, if they cannot agree on which 2 occurred, then they're not supposed to be able to find him guilty. But the order of it is confusing, because they'd be like, yeah, there was racketeering. And then I guess they're saying, if you find that enterprise existed, there was a common purpose, there was blah, 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 then they could get down here and not necessarily agree. But I'm not seeing how these are the offenses, y'all. And then the other 2 counts, count 2 is trafficking Cassie. 3 is transporting Cassie across state lines and paying her as a hooker girlfriend. 4 is trafficking Jane, and 5 is transporting Jane across state lines. So what I'm saying, I don't see how, if it's a yes for Mann Act of both of the girls, for example, that's 2 counts. So I don't see how that would not make an agreement for the RICO. Everyone is confused. Look, the fact that everyone is confused. Is it possible for him to agree that he is guilty of RICO with the 2 acts? But what if they could absolutely be hung up on which acts occurred. For sure. Remember, we said bribery, but even for bribery, keep in mind, even for bribery, the defense gave the argument that, oh, it wasn't bribery. We were paying to get the bad press to go away. So again, if you're that juror who just does not want to find him guilty and you're over it, then you're going to say no bribery. Hold on, let me keep going. So a grown adult can't cross state lines to have sex. You can, but you're supposed to not pay for it. See, I want to be very clear. When I said he is going, bad press still is bribery. But when I said he would go down for the hookers, I meant the hookers. I don't mean Jane and Cassie. But the problem is the Mann Act as written, or the charge, they're not charging him for transporting the male hookers in interstate commerce. They're charging him for Jane and Cassie only. Someone says this is what happens How could they not agree on RICO when he paid for all these things with business accounts? I don't know. If they found him not guilty of all the other charges, why would he? Okay. Let's process that. If they found him not guilty of all the other charges, why would they be hung on the RICO? Okay. Let's get that. Thank you, Golden Pisces. Okay, and that's why I think I'm slow. Hold on. I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to just drop the link if someone wants to join us real quick, because I want to confirm this here. I just dropped the link. If you don't have to show your face, but tell me your thoughts here. I am just so perplexed. I want to go back and look at the defense. I'm going to go back and look at the chart. While you're doing that, I'm going to try to pull up the charging instructions. So if someone could join, come on up. Come on up. In the meantime, don't forget, guys, I'm your legal bestie, Attorney Symone. You can always book with me. Come to my website, SymoneRedwine.com, which is here. Click this little part and you can click book or hire Symone for a consult. You can, and you schedule right there. It starts at $199. And then there's also, you can get my book, which is Background Checks 101, the Beginner's Guide to Finding Out who the heck you're actually dealing with. Hold on. All right, great. We got somebody. Who do we have? Let's see, Kavari. All right, Kavari, what you got? Help me here.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to I wanted to ask. So if
While you're doing, and I just want to let you guys know, while you're talking, I'm going to be looking and checking the docket. I want to see if there are more documents that could shed more light on what's going on here. All right, keep going.
all right. So I was gonna ask, like, what if they do agree on 2 acts? Like, they do agree there are 2 acts on the RICO, but there are other acts that they're not so sure on. That's what's holding them up.
They only need 2. So that's okay. They don't have to agree on the other.
So if they don't agree on the other ones
Under RICO.
it's okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I was confused. I'm like, maybe like they just, I mean, they do agree on 2, but then there are others that they don't necessarily agree on, and they don't want to, like, say, oh yeah, this as well, because
that could be. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Like, maybe they made it to the 2, but maybe they're like, okay, there's other ones, and we don't want to check this off. Again, that allows to give him more time. Like they could, like, that's what. But
even then, I feel like because the way that the jury form is written, right, the one that I just showed you guys, 24 CR 542. Hold on, 24. Hold on, I'm trying to pull up the docket. CR. But the way that it's written, though, they just have to pick which 2 are unanimous. So I guess, I'm trying to understand. So you're saying they can't agree on which of the 2 would be. But if they could at least agree that 2 are unanimous, then the other ones, they could just say not unanimous. But it sounds like they can't come to an agreement on even 2, which could mean they can't agree on the enterprise issue or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, so you could just say, like, oh yeah, these other ones are not unanimous.
Yeah, so let me just put this back up here so you can see it, but make it real big. You're saying, sorry, what are you saying about the unanimous part? Here you go. I want you to see this part. So you see how the first question is, do you find him guilty, basically, on, how do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty on racketeering? Then it says, if and only if you find him guilty of count 1, which types of racketeering acts do you unanimously find were involved in the offense?
Okay.
Because counts 2 and 3 are about Cassie and Jane. A jury could say that was consensual, and then count 1, they could say the prosecution was proven, okay, X, Y, or Z, but maybe they can't come up with a second offense that they can agree on. Woo. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Was that Kavari?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Kavari. All right.
Thank you.
All right, G, you ready?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
Okay, there you go,
hi,
G. Okay, just real quick, before you jump on, I want to thank someone for super chat. Thank you. Camberry says, as much as people hate Puff, what happens in this trial becomes case law. It is a slippery slope with the distribution and bribery charges. No one should want him to be guilty of those. Oh no, the bribery was bribery. I want him guilty of the bribery. I could see how the distribution is more fluid because he was partying with friends and girlfriends and things like that, coworkers. But no, that bribery. Yep. You have to understand the bribery is significant because by making that tape go away, Cassie was never able to get justice. They keep hopping around talking about, yeah, it was domestic violence. She should have gone to jail for that. But she knew, and it said in her lawsuit, she knew his ability to make that tape go away showed her how strong he was. And she stuck that ish out for 2 more years. Plus, she was never able to have him criminally prosecuted, and he continued to show above the law. So thank you for that, Cambry. I really appreciate your thought process, though. And you're right, it does create law. I was trying to get to 80K. People subscribe. Yes. Keep the subscriptions coming. All right, go ahead. Please continue.
Oh yeah, so okay, so I've kind of had a thought about this for the past hour. So I think there's just one of several things that can happen.
Thank you.
If he's not guilty on the other counts, surely you would just find him not guilty of the RICO at that point, because the RICO is the hardest part. Because like, this is the one way to think about it. If he's not guilty of everything else, at this point, I'm just gonna find him not guilty of RICO and acquit him on all charges. If I'm thinking about it,
I see.
But then, so that's one option. But
Okay.
what I'm thinking of that is that I'm also having an issue is that if they've convicted him on one count of sex trafficking, surely that would go under RICO because that is a RICO predicate. So then I keep thinking is the issue can they just not agree on 2, or are they having issues of whether it was an enterprise? But if it wasn't an enterprise, then surely they wouldn't have gone down to the predicates. Like, you see how, because of how complex that it is, like multiple different ways to think about it. Because I'm just thinking, if it's not guilty on everything else, I would just acquit him at that point. So maybe but then I'm also thinking is that like, maybe if it's just guilty on the Mann Act, it might just be guilty on the Mann Act, and then they're just struggling to find another one. So maybe it's nothing for sex trafficking, and it's just the Mann Act, and maybe they got him with that under RICO, but they just can't find another one. Like, there's so many different ways you can think about it.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. So, okay. So I think I hear what you're saying. You're saying if it was not guilty on the other 4, then they should be able to just find him not guilty of the RICO.
Because it's the harder one. Because it's the hardest one. Like, think about it. Like,
what makes you feel? I actually thought S trafficking was the hardest one. I thought that was easier, especially now that they confirmed it could be the same offense twice. So what makes you feel like it's the hardest? Is it because of the whole enterprise and all of that?
I think RICO is probably the most complex one because it's I mean, I'll speak for myself. I get it, but I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I think what's weird to me is that in this case, the fact that there are no other co-defendants is being used against the government. But then in the R. Kelly case, it didn't seem to be much of a problem. So I'm still a bit confused as to why people have a problem with it in this case. But I followed the R. Kelly case. This was really not brought up, but maybe it's that. Maybe people are saying that, okay, well, they didn't co-conspire, or maybe they're just having a hard time unanimously agreeing on 2 RICO predicates. Maybe they just have one and they're stuck on another one. Like, there are multiple ways to think about it. Like,
help me, Amari. No, I'm not high, but I'm feeling dumb. Help me, Amari. Yeah,
I'm just thinking that if it's a guilty on sex trafficking, then that's a RICO predicate. So that's why I'm like, maybe it's just the Mann Act that they got him on.
Okay, that would, but then why wouldn't they be able to? Okay, so perhaps they said guilty on Mann Act, but they just can't agree on a second underlying offense.
Maybe
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like, I'm thinking about it multiple different ways. Maybe guilty on the Mann Act, but maybe guilty on the RICO predicate, but maybe they just can't find another one. Because
a second one that they agree
because I'm thinking that because sex trafficking is another RICO act, if they found a guilty on the sex trafficking, that's another RICO act that's fulfilled. So that would take it there. So that's why I'm like, there are so many different ways to think about it. And I really just wish, another thing I'll just say, I really wish that the judge would just like say, if they can't agree on one charge, just let the other charges go and just leave that one charge. Like, you know, in like the Harvey Weinstein verdict, they let
no, they can't. They tried that. And the judge was like, go back and deliberate. See, remember, like I told you guys yesterday that the judge was going to specifically, they would come back and say they were hung. I knew they were going to do that. And the judge would be like, you got to go back and do it again. Let me take this opportunity to just clarify that what the judge is going to do, it's something called, and I want to answer this bribery question. It is super, super important. I need to clarify that. There we go. Hold on. This is. All right. So what the judge is going to do tomorrow is he's going to do something called an Allen charge. Okay. What that is, it's an additional instruction to the jury. and it's given by the judge where a jury is deadlocked, and it encourages them to continue deliberating and to try and reach a unanimous verdict. But it's a little more specific. So when a jury says they can't agree on a verdict on a certain count, the judge can issue this specific charge. And they call it a dynamite charge because it reflects a potential impact. It's super important, basically, and it can be forceful and persuasive. Here's the issue. Some people feel that it would set up a huge appeal, right? They argue that it can pressure jurors, and particularly those in the minority, to abandon their views. This is what an Allen charge does. It tells, the judge basically goes and tells everyone, hey, you all know your strongest arguments for how you see things on your side. Now I want you to go back in there and I want you to just talk about your weakest arguments for your side. Go ahead. Present what is the weakest for, if you feel like he's guilty, what's the weakest argument for his guilt? And then each person go around the room and you each talk about where the weakest parts, because what that does is it helps people deliberate even deeper. It can also cause issues and different things like that, but it emphasizes the weaknesses in each case. And sometimes after you get that charge, they're able to go back and come to an agreement. But I think you make some really good points there. I really appreciated you, G. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, great. All right, I want to answer this bribery thing. Nadia, I'm gonna put you up. Thank you. But before we start with you, Nadia, yeah, S. Pierce has a great point, a great question. I get this all the time. I actually was in front of the courthouse one day debating this with a guy who told me, he said the same thing. He said, no, bribery has to have law enforcement. And I was like, yeah, that's what happens when you go to Google School of Law. Here's the thing. This is the bribery that was charged under RICO. It's California Penal Code 137, and you don't have to have law enforcement. What you have to show is that Diddy gave or offered a bribe to a witness. And a witness does not have to be law enforcement. They gave or offered a bribe to a witness or a person about to give important information to a cop. Either or. They can just be a witness. Okay? Or a person about to be called a witness. They could just be a witness. And so he gave or offered the bribe, and he acted with a corrupt intent to persuade the witness or the person to agree that it would influence their testimony or their information. The corrupt intent here, if someone is like, I don't want to send Diddy to jail, they're going to go with the, oh, no, this was for protecting his image and not seeking bad press. But remember, testimony elicited in closing, the prosecutor came in and she said, but wait a minute. They told Eddie Garcia after he got the 100,000, make sure you don't make any big purchases. Don't make no major purchases. You don't want to alarm the cops. Well, TMZ wouldn't be looking for big purchases is what she says. And therefore alarming the cops is only an issue if you know you've committed bribery or an offense where they would tie you to that. Okay. All right, Nadia, you ready?
Yes, girl. Ooh. So let me tell you. First of all, I'm disgusted with the jury, but that's neither here nor there. So this is my personal theory. I don't think he's been found guilty of everything, and I don't think he's been found not guilty of everything. What I think is he's only been found guilty of one charge, and that is why they are hung on the RICO. Because if it was not guilty across the board, it would be not guilty on RICO. If it was guilty across the board, it would be guilty on RICO. So and even if it was two guilties.
Wait, tell me why you think it would also be, because here's why. Because the other charges are trafficking and the Mann Act, I'm having trouble figuring out how, if it's a not guilty on those, they could not find him guilty of bribery and distribution of substances or something like that.
I don't think, I mean, even though they asked about it, I don't think that they are looking at, I don't think that they're looking at the bribery and I think that they're just saying, okay, it's sex trafficking and prostitution. And those are the predicates they're looking for RICO. Because I felt like they had him on RICO dead to rights. But the fact that they're saying like, okay, well, we have a verdict on these, but not RICO. That was my first theory, that they've got a guilty on one and nothing on the others. The other theory I had was maybe they're concerned if they find him guilty on the RICO that he loses his fortune. So maybe they feel like, you know what, he should go to prison, but this is not worth him losing everything he's worked pretty much his entire life.
That's interesting. If that is discussed, they're not allowed to do that. So I don't know what the judge would do. The government's email correspondence. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. They'd be in big trouble if they did that. I mean, they're not supposed to, but again, at this point, it's very hard to disturb what the jury is working on.
This is my third theory, is
Okay.
that they feel like, well, if we find him guilty of RICO, then that opens the door for the prosecution to bring in whoever the co-conspirators are under seal. And maybe they feel like nobody else deserves to go to prison for this other than him. And if we find him guilty of the RICO, then that's us acknowledging that he has co-conspirators and that whoever's under seal committed these crimes too. That means KK could go to jail, and maybe don't think nobody else needs to go to jail for the things that really he did, and they just did either, for work, for lifestyle, or whatever the case is. But those are my three theories as to why.
Okay. I love a good theory. All right. I really appreciate it. I'm just I'm actually surprised that they've even come to an agreement on 4 so quickly.
I think
that
was very nervous because now he knows for a fact that he's probably not going home right away.
They said his mama. There we go. Oh yes, if you're watching this on replay, make sure you put on the live chat so you can see the comments, because people are over in these comments cussing and fussing each other out, y'all. But yeah, they said his mama was upset and crying today.
I would be too, even if I did raise a monster.
Yeah. It's Margaret. Thank you so much for the super chat.
You.
Margaret, thank you so much, Nadia. All right. If anyone else wants to join, I actually just pinned the link. Thanks, Nadia. I pinned the link for you to do so. Hey, Veronique. It says, CJ, while you're doing that, I'm checking the docket. So I'm adding people to give their thoughts while I check the docket. Hey, Afra, I see you next. Veronique, you can go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Traffic is crazy. Hold on. Cassie and Jane being trafficked is crazy. What the hell? The defense. Oh, Margaret. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, Symone. Yeah. So I actually think that they are going to be, I think they could be split on the enterprise. I think that they probably have maybe 2 counts of guilty for the sex trafficking and transportation for Cassie. I do not think they are going to come back guilty for Jane Doe. But I was also wondering, so I know that they're saying that it has to be sex trafficking for Cassie, but it also says not limited to Cassie and Jane. So does that include the hookers as well?
Oh, that's true. Hold on. Yes, no, you're right. Let me go back to that form. Oh, thank you. Because I was like, I know I'm not crazy. Hold on. For which? Oh, wait. The Mann Act. Where does it say not limited to? Hold on.
I feel like I saw that on one of the jury instructions.
Here's what's confusing now. I'm looking at it may have said that in the instructions. How do you find the defendant? How do you find the defendant? Guilty or not guilty? Yeah. Acts involving. No, I think the standalones are already only that if and only if you find him guilty. Did the pattern include trafficking Cassie? If and only if, did the pattern include trafficking Jane? And then how do you find trafficking of Cassie? Mann Act. The man, like that standalone counts. I thought there was a standalone counts for all the hookers. No. Hookers would be included under acts involving transportation for purposes of prostitution under RICO. So that would be under RICO that they could find him. They could include the guys, basically. I don't understand why they wouldn't do a standalone for the guys.
Yeah, I was confused on that too. One. I'm also confused on the distribution, especially since they sent a note about that in yesterday. I feel like that, would be a predicate that they could fairly come to easily on. But being that they're still split on the RICO, maybe some are, maybe some aren't, or they just put this out on the enterprise.
So, guys, it sounds like since yesterday they've been stuck on RICO. That's big. Yeah, because it sounded like they were trying to start with what appeared to be the simplest offenses, like, hey, can we agree on anything simple here, right? Distribution sounds like it would be simple. Bribery, fairly simple. But apparently they couldn't. They haven't been able to, but they were able to jump down to the lower ones. Now, Kimberly is sharing, thank you so much for the super chat. A RICO claim can't exist in the absence of criminal activity. The government must prove a pattern of activity to get. So here's the problem with that definition. You're right, Kimberly, but under the government definition, a pattern is simply 2 acts that occur within 10 years of each other. The other thing is they do have to show that the pattern continued into like past 2019 or something like that, that it continued into the present. And people could feel like maybe Cassie's situation was the last trafficking act and that Jane wasn't trafficked. I'm not sure. But I hear you, but they can't exist in that. The government must prove a pattern. Yeah. The pattern is just two activities. It's not like how we would originally consider a pattern, but thank you. Okay. Gosh. So what would you do if you were on the jury? Let's see.
If I was on the jury, I would come back guilty for Cassie for sex trafficking and transportation. I would also come back for the distribution and bribery. I feel like that's pretty clear cut. I feel like the prosecution did a good job of basically lining that up. So I'm confused on why the jury is still split, but I guess we'll find out more tomorrow.
Right. Okay, guys. So this is just a recap. So the big deal here is, so Kay, thank you so much for the super chat. What did they agree on? What is counts 2 to 4? I'm confused. They agreed on whether Jane and Cassie were trafficked and whether Jane and Cassie were transported under the Mann Act across state lines for prostitution. That's what they've agreed on. We don't know which way, guilty or not guilty, but they've agreed on that, and they cannot agree on the RICO. And this appears to be an extension from yesterday when they asked the distribution question. And that question was, if someone asks you for drugs and you give it to them, is that distribution? And the judge basically reread the jury instructions and added, distribution does not require a sale. And what I explained at the beginning of this live is my concern is that if you are now telling these people, if your best friend asks you for drugs and you give it to her, that you're now a distributor, perhaps under RICO, but definitely a distributor of narcotics. Even though that's the law, I could see some people on that jury saying, I'm not going to vote that way because I don't think that's a fair law. Yep. All right. Thank you, Kathy. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Next up, we got, let me see. I see Afra. I'm going to go ahead and add you real quick.
Hey, bestie.
Hey,
how are you? This trial is just like, I still believe in humanity, but like I've definitely lost some faith in people because I can't understand why. It's one thing, like you said, to feel like, oh, your personal thing, but like I think if you give your friends pills, you probably don't like routinely require them to take them so that they can stay awake to
or have a freak off
entertained for days of time. If you have freaky sex with multiple people, you're probably not doing it in a way where you're forcing people that are like, I'm tired, I'm in pain, I don't want to do this today, I have my period, like whatever. Like you're probably not forcing after you like beat
Dala, thank you so much for the super chat.
Yeah, you're probably not forcing someone. Sorry, I want to make sure I don't mess your mind.
No, go ahead. You got it.
Yeah, you're not forcing someone after you beat them up to say like, okay, now come and let's have sex. Like go put some makeup on. It's when they said that they had to show at least one charge. I just think that the fact that people can't understand that even if you're married, I think I saw it was like in the 1980s, they finally did something to change that. Yes, you could be sexually assaulted, you could be SA'd by a marital partner, because before that was not a law. Like if you didn't want to engage in activity with someone that you were married to, even if maybe that person, left you for some other person for months or years and then just showed up and decided, hey, I want to have my way with you, you couldn't press charges against them for that. The current president's wife, one of his ex-wives, one of his many ex-wives, actually charged him with that in their divorce case. And they were like, yeah, you can't do that. You guys were married, so it doesn't count.
No, so, I hear you. Hold on. Ashley P makes a great point. She says, they're having trouble agreeing on the predicates. Why doesn't the verdict form say that they need 2 for guilt? Girl, I was thinking the same thing. The verdict form is what we got on the screen here. This is the RICO section that I'm actually showing, which is where they're hung, right? They are hung on the RICO. All right. I don't know why it doesn't say that they need to agree on 2 of them. Now, the instructions told them that. I know that because I heard her say it and I read it in the transcript. So, okay. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Okay. All right. Any final words, Afra? I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the distribution, the trafficking, the coercion, the fraud, the bribery. I mean, it's all there. So I can't see any reason except for some of the things that you said, which is people can't, take their personal feelings out of something that is not about them. It's about the law. Like we all know the law, and if we, like what I said in the comments, are you going to hand a bag of weed over to your friend in front of police? Are you going to drink a bottle of whiskey while you're sitting in the driver's seat of your car in front of police? You're not going to do that. So I don't know if you do that some other time, but like when it comes to the law, we know the law, and he's run amok, and this is literally just the things that they could get to stick in the time of this. So
no, absolutely.
But
no, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Africa. I really, Afra, sorry, not Africa. Dwayne, are you ready? I'm going to pull you down. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Okay. Listen, someone is saying, oh, wait, they're having trouble agreeing to the two predicates. Why doesn't the verdict form again state that they need to agree on the two predicates? For the life of me, I don't understand why the verdict form is not clear that they need the instructions are. That is very strange, but go ahead. What are your thoughts, Dwayne? How do you think the jury is coming out on it?
My theory is they got 2 on the Mann Act, and they got 1 for Cassidy, and they debate on the RICO and whatnot. But like keeping up with this case got me all over the place with the law, because I'm a law-abiding citizen. I go to work every day, and I did not know, like, you can get in trouble for like you said, crossing state line for prostitutes and everything. It's crazy,
right?
Like, man.
You know what? I'm gonna pull up the jury instructions from the R. Kelly case. Hold on. And I want to see what it says. What are the instructions on Mann Act there, to see how that works? But thank you so much for your comment. I really appreciate you. Yeah, while we do, I'm gonna pull up the jury instructions there, because this is crazy.
So did R. Kelly get convicted of the Mann Act and sex trafficking? Or they do the same thing?
No, he both. It's 2 separate things. Yeah, I got the instructions here. Okay, well, I'll show that later. All right, well, thank you so much, Dwayne. All right, next up we got Clayton. Hit that subscribe, guys. We are close. We are so close. My goal by the end of this trial is try to get to 80,000. Hit that. Yeah, hit that. Yeah, okay. Oop. Go ahead, start. I can't hear you. Are you on mute? Yep, Clayton.
Oh, I was.
There you go.
Sorry.
Okay,
and like Queen and like the goddess said, hit that subscribe button, family. So my question is, or not a question, you mentioned something I heard you say, I think on a couple of you, probably 2 lives ago, you said that women would be the main ones that would support Diddy. Could you please explain that again? Because that's what I'm hearing right now.
Yeah, that's important. So listen, and I got this little write up here. I want to break down the jurors too next. When I said that about women, what I'm saying is this. So historically, in law school, basically, I worked in the criminal defense clinic, and the head attorney there, he had taught us about how the biggest mistake he felt like in his career is he represented this guy who was being accused of the R word. He knew his client was innocent. It was a former girlfriend who was salty about it, right? So he chooses pretty much an all-female jury, because he's like, all male jury, all male, because he feels like men on that jury would see that this woman is lying on his client, like Shirley. No, they didn't. Those men all found his client guilty, and it was horrible, because we all know how you're treated when you're accused of the R word in prison. Here's the bigger thing. Think of it from this analogy. Most little girls, if they are touched inappropriately, right, they go and they tell a woman in their life, mom, wherever, and that woman frequently will not believe them. I need an amen in the chat if you've seen that as a woman somewhere. Or someone will say, well, what were you wearing? Or you were leading them on, or you act too fast, or this, that, and the third. And they find a way to put it back on the little girl, right? Versus generally, if you go tell your granddaddy, you tell your brother, you tell whomever that's a man, when you tell a man, that man will swing on that other man first and ask questions later. Am I wrong?
No.
Am I wrong?
No.
Men are more likely to, they said it's something about the male psyche where male jurors don't want to feel like they let an R-word person walk. Versus women are more likely to distrust the woman and see it as though, well, if you didn't do what I would do, well, I would have called the police. Why didn't you call the police? If you did not do that type of thing, then you must be lying. You're a liar. You're a liar. You just wanted that man. You just wanted Puffy. You wanted him because he was rich and he was famous. You just wanted him. You're not a victim. And that is why, if you are a male defendant, you want females on your jury. But here, he's got 8 men, 4 women. Here, there are 8 men, 4 women. Clip that. Somebody clip this little segment. Somebody give me the timestamp for me talking about this. How women, I really appreciate this question. How women judge other women. Women on juries judge female victims way more harshly than men do. And so we've heard about multiple jurors about a woman who was just enamored by Mark when Mark gave his closing. And it was an older Black woman, and she was just charming and da-da-da-da-da. And there was a segment where Mims, make it make sense, he said that Mark was talking about how Cassie was so beautiful and this, and she stopped smiling. But then Mark started talking about how handsome Michael B. Jackson, Michael B. Jackson, Michael B. Jordan was. And she started smiling again. It was almost as though like, you like that white girl. Ugh. In other words, I say that to say it's just another iteration. It could be of how women can judge other women more harshly. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And I also appreciate the super chat that we have here on the screen. All right, Clayton. All right. Next up, we got, let's see. Oh, I see Miss Chris. You ready? Yes. Nod your head, Miss Chris, if you're ready. Okay, go ahead, Miss Chris. And then as you're doing this, Miss Chris, I'm going to pull up what I learned. Okay, here we go. It says, and you might need to, it says the judge's instructions, hold on, said it had to be 2. So maybe they didn't find 2 of the 8 listed under the instruction. I agree. Yeah, Kimberly, you're so right. The instructions absolutely said that. And the jury charge said that, and the closings arguments said that. So definitely 2 of the 8. All right. And thank you for that super chat. All right, Miss Chris, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I studied to be a paralegal.
Unless you want to hang out. You want to hang out?
No, that's fine. I can hang out.
No. Go ahead, Miss Chris. You said you studied paralegal, and what are your thoughts?
Actually, I've been listening every day to you of this whole trial. And I honestly think they're looking, if they found him guilty of counts 2 through 5, they're looking at Rico and don't realize they're looking at it.
Well, we don't know, though, if they found him guilty of 2 through 5.
That's what I'm saying. If they did.
Oh, if they did, yes, then they're looking at Rico counts. That's my point.
Yeah. If they didn't, the paying off the security guard and flying the male escorts gets them their Rico.
That's what I thought. But that's what I thought. You'd have to be willing to say there's no bribery. I mean, that's what don't make no sense. That's what doesn't make any sense. And let me go okay, here we go.
Because they bribed the security guard to get the tape.
Yeah, let me read. Here we go. We want the man act. I'm looking at Here we go. Mann Act. Okay. 72. I'm looking at the jury instructions from R. Kelly to see, just to compare. Okay, that's pretty simple. All right. Okay, you guys. So for those of you guys who are talking about, I want to put this up on the screen. What page is this? 72. Who are talking about the lower counts, right? The Mann Act are the lower counts. Okay, there we go. I'm going to go to the page. This is from the R. Kelly case, just because the instructions here are not up yet. It's like 76 or something like that. Here we go. They're not up. So I'm going to just put these up as an example, and we'll use it so that just so that you can see the wording for the prostitution across state lines. Because remember, those are within the 4 counts that they are able to agree on. So again, the facts are different in R. Kelly, but simply the instructions state that the defendant, okay, in order to find him guilty under the Mann Act, it said, here we go. Let me just do this one. My vision is bad. Hold on a second. It says that the defendant knowingly transported or caused the transportation of Jane in interstate commerce, as alleged in the indictment, and that the defendant transported Jane with the intent that he would engage in X with Jane, and that X activity, a person can be charged, and that for that X activity, a person can be charged with a criminal offense. In other words, prostitution. Maybe they are agreeing to that. Okay, yeah, it was that simple. The defendant knowingly transported or caused the transportation of Jane. This is just for the Mann Act. This would be the Mann Act for Jane and the Mann Act for Cassie. That Diddy knowingly transported or caused the transportation of Jane, basically gave her a flight in interstate commerce, as alleged, and that Diddy transported Jane with the intent that he would engage in sexual activity with her, and for that activity, a person can be charged with a criminal offense. And yeah, well, I guess the question is, but can they be charged with a criminal offense? I see what you're saying there. Somebody says, I have instructions for this trial. You have the instructions for this trial. Okay, let me see. I got the trial still up. So what are your last thoughts, Miss Chris? I really appreciate your participation.
Oh, honey, trust me, I am so into this.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay,
I'm hoping they get him on all the charges.
Oh, you want all of them? Okay.
Yeah.
Playing around. Okay, I'm trying to find. No, I'm still searching through these jury instructions. I had this case up. What the hell? All right, we're gonna get that. Well, thank you so much, Miss Chris. All right, next up we got. While we're doing that, I'm gonna see if I could find. Someone says they think that they're seeing the instructions, so I'm gonna go ahead and see if I see them. We got Afra already spoke. Sheena, you ready? What if that was your son, though? That's a great point. Yeah. Hey, Sheena.
Hi. Yes. Okay.
My son. You're right.
So I think personally they're having trouble finding this as an enterprise. Personally, I can't see how they cannot find at least 2 out of the 8 different charges.
Oh, Dr. Shanita Betts, just want to tell you, thank you so much for the Cash App. I just saw a Cash App. Keep going.
Yeah, so I can't imagine that they can't agree on at least 2 counts. Under RICO, a lot of people are saying, like, this is a common argument, is that how can you charge RICO with one person and there's no conspirators? We know that they've listed them, named them, but people are really having a problem with nobody else being charged with him. And I think it could have been a huge mistake.
Not charge the co-conspirators at the same time?
Yeah, I get why you did, but you cannot.
No, you can't charge them at the same time because you need them to get to Diddy. So, for example, generally the co-conspirator, you seal their indictment, right? You keep it sealed. So they're charged, but they have not yet been arrested, with the understanding that if you cooperate, we'll go easier on you. You have to do that that's the only way to get them to sit down, talk to you, tell you what they know. Otherwise, they're going to plead the fifth.
Yeah.
If they're an active defendant, right, they're going to plead the fifth. But Mark was completely improper and out of bounds when he told that jury, where are the other co-conspirators? You cannot do that. It's against the rules. It is completely against the ethical and rules and so forth. And in fact, if the prosecution had done it, it would have been grounds for mistrial.
Mm-hmm. Are you saying that that was made clear to the jury and there's no way that could be a reason
Unheard.
why?
Yes. So that was made. So he said that, and then the judge instructed him and told him, you're wrong. You're not supposed to do that. And then instructed the jury later that day when they came back from lunch that they must disregard him saying the statement about the co-conspirators. That's why I was saying, well, if I was Maureen Comey, I would have came back and said, oh, he said we should have called co-conspirators. They could have called him. She did say that. They could have called him, but also Diddy could have took the stand. So Diddy didn't take the stand. So if he didn't have no co-conspirators, why didn't he tell you himself? I would have said that. Both of them are improper for different reasons, but along the same lines. But I could see that. Especially. But the law and the instructions, though, clearly state that you do not have to charge co-conspirators in the same case. And throughout the case, they continue to use the word co-conspirators. I think people also know a lot of times you may charge two defendants in separate cases. It doesn't mean they're not getting charged. It just means for whatever reason, someone else is going first.
The other thing that I hear a lot is that there isn't a common goal. Like they don't see a common goal, and that's why it can't be like an enterprise situation. Now, for me, I'm like, the common goal is to please Diddy. The sexual activity does not have to be a financial goal. I felt like that was made clear, but was it not made clear? I'm trying to understand why they wouldn't see it as RICO. And these are the two common reasons why I'm hearing people don't see the RICO.
Yeah, the common goal, according to the indictment and the instructions, was that they just wanted to keep him at. Yeah, it says the We got the what, but we've got the goals of the enterprise. Hold on. Here it is. Multiple. The goals of the enterprising were pleasing. It said in closing and in the instructions were pleasing his actual desires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens to all of those predicate acts under RICO if he's found not guilty of RICO?
Then that just means they couldn't agree on which of the predicate acts he actually committed.
So bribery, arson, any of those, nothing happens with it?
He skates. Yep, he skates.
Okay, and the last comment is about fear and consent. They made it clear it can be removed at any time, but consent has to be clear. Like if it's being removed, it has to be clear. And what if it's fear or distress? Was that made clear to the jury that can also be removal of consent or non-consent?
As in?
Well, in Cassie and Jane, there's a lot of times where they seem to just go with it, right?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the acts, but a lot of the things surrounding those events, it's like, clearly I'd be afraid and I would just do anything so I wouldn't get hurt or whatever. But they may not have verbally said, no, I don't want to or whatever. And so do they understand that too is non-consensual if they're just scared?
No, that makes sense. I think that's going to be, the consent, the fear. And then I think just at the end of the day, the closing arguments of the defense did a really good job of making people feel like, hey, this could be you next. If Diddy's found guilty of this, they could be in your bedroom. They could be, adjudicating whether or not you should be, the next one going to jail. So I think that's what's making it difficult as well for jurors to simply follow the instructions. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate that. Okay. And then next up we got Sheena. Are you already up? I think you are. Okay, Sheena, go ahead. I'm looking for this. I got a summary of the jurors and I want to see it. Okay, here we go. Sheena, go ahead. Sheena. Okay, let's see. No, Sheena. All right. So Sheena. All right. What about Miss Robinson? Are you ready?
Yes, I'm here. How are you?
Good.
I think that the jury is hung up on the girls giving, basically, in a sense, they thinking they're giving consent to go do these things because they heard them saying, "Oh, let's do," like Cassie. "Oh, I'm ready for the freak off." They're not looking at the fact that he groomed these women, these young women, at first. He groomed them, loved on them, and all that good stuff. And then next, he hit them with the boom. It's time for freak off time,
Right.
And they're not they didn't listen to that psychologist that was on the stand.
Mm-hmm.
The psychologist understands saying how the grooming happens and then what happens after the fact. And I don't think they're looking at that.
Well, I think what was difficult with that expert, though, is she never even sat down with Cassie. She never sat down with any of the alleged victims in the case. So when that happens, it's very easy for someone to justify dismissing her.
Wow.
Yeah. Because they're like, what do you know? But see, one of the experts that Diddy was going to call was his own expert on trafficking and things like that. But they ultimately decided not to, which they're totally able to do. But I thought that was interesting because it seemed that with the trafficking, it seemed that, that expert that they had, here we are. What the hell? It would be the best way to combat an expert is generally with a better expert on your own side. I'm a big advocate of that. But it sounds like perhaps he did not want to allow his expert to be open to cross-examination that would in any way cause her to align his activities with force, fraud, coercion, or any of the other stuff. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Oh, no, go ahead.
You. No, well, I just was thinking, like, it's just so crazy that they're actually really thinking about his personal bedroom time. And that's not what the case is about. It comes about because the young women speak on it. They had to speak on it. This is what happened, blah, 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 blah. But they have to take it out his nastiness, you know what I mean? And just look at the facts. And I don't think they're looking at the facts.
Looking at the facts. I hear you, Miss Robinson. All right. Oh, this is a really good point. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. All right. So this is a really interesting point. Mens rea mean the mental state, right? There's mental states for certain, but not all the offenses. How does Diddy know, though, that yes really means no? I would argue, right? If I was on the prosecution side, I'd argue that he knew that Cassie's no at the freak off, at whatever point you figured out you needed to put your hands on her, and people are disagreeing with me in the comments. They're like, he didn't drag her back to the room. He beat that girl up. She was trying to leave. As she was trying to leave, he came out and beat her some more. And he pulled her in a way that was away from the elevator. People were saying that it was for his cell phone. Maureen Comey shut that down because actually he walks out with his cell phone initially. And then later on, it was actually Cassie's cell phone that he was trying to take from her. And she's testified previously that he would take her cell phone from her. And that was able to be established by later in that incident. He said something like here and handed the cell phone, right? When you do that, like you don't give someone your cell phone. But this mens rea is important. I want to show you this. Let's talk about the jurors because we can't talk about the notes and where they are stuck at without talking about who these jurors are. So I'm going to share this tab. Remember, I'm your legal bestie, attorney Symone. And here's what we're covering. We are covering the fact that the jury in Diddy's case is now claiming that they are in agreement on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5. Wait, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2 through 4, but they cannot agree as to count 1. Sorry, 2 through 5. They can't agree as to count 1. The issue of count 1, of course, is RICO. But remember, all of this started with juror number 33 and juror number, 25, the concern that the foreman believed that they were going to have issues with juror number 25 following instructions. I'm going to read off to you the makeup of the jurors and their number. Interesting. Right? This doesn't say. Oh, here it is. Here it is. We'll start with 25. Remember, 25. And here's what happens with them being hung. Just for those who are joining us now, what happens when they're hung like this is whatever the verdict is for those 4 will stand, guilt, innocence, whatever. Then for the RICO charge, if they can't agree, there will be a mistrial as to that charge only, and the government can decide whether or not they want to come back and charge him for that. But if the judge accepts the other 4, whatever they might be, those 4 counts, whatever that verdict is that they said they're ready for, it doesn't have an effect on the one that they cannot agree on, right? But right now, the judge, I told you guys it was going to be too soon, that the judge was going to tell them, go back, come back tomorrow. And the judge has now opened it up and said that even though the court is closed on July 3rd, Thursday, they can come and deliberate. So here's what we know. Let's start with juror 25. That was the one that was concerned he couldn't follow instructions. He is a 51-year-old white man who works as a scientist and lives in Manhattan with his domestic partner. I think he is a gay man. I think he's a gay boy. And it would be interesting that the gay boy might feel like they are criminalizing this man's intimacy and what he does behind closed doors. And gay men are the first person to be like, look, I do freaky dicky-ish and I don't want to go to jail for it. So don't you criminalize me either. That could have been a very important pick as a juror. So that was number 51. More than likely, because they said he came in that room and the concern was he wouldn't follow the judge's instructions, and the judge's instructions are to read through, the jury instructions and make your decision based on the law, put it to the facts. That meant he came in that room and said, I don't care what nothing says, you're not changing my mind. I'm going to vote in this way. All right. Juror number 2 is a 69-year-old man who works as a massage therapist in Manhattan. He's got a bachelor's of fine arts in acting from NYU. Okay. Juror 5, as y'all are listening to these jurors, let me know which ones, if any, do you think may stand out as a problem juror? Because currently the wording that they use is that they are basically unable to come to an agreement. Juror 5 is a 31-year-old man who works as an investment analyst. His hobbies include golf, tennis, video games. He described himself as an active churchgoer. I think that's probably the guy that Mims on Make It Make Sense calls Smiley. Juror 28 is a 30-year-old woman who lives in the Bronx with her mom and brother. She works as a deli clerk at a grocery store. I think I know which one that is. Sometimes she laughs inappropriately. Juror 55 is a 42-year-old woman who lives in Manhattan with her fiance. She works at a nursing home and said she is not a fan of news, but I bet she's a fan of social media. I think that is probably the woman who was making faces and stuff with Mark and others. And then there's basically she's Team Diddy. Juror 55 is, if it's who I think it is. Juror 75 is a 68-year-old man, retired and previously worked in finance. He lives in Westchester County with his wife and said he listens to old Indian music and likes to play cricket and volleyball. Not sure how he's going to feel about this freaky shit. Juror 116 is a 68-year-old man who lives in Westchester County with his wife and kids. It says he's a retired lineman. Then there's 160 is a 43-year-old woman who is a physician's assistant and works with elderly patients. Okay. She lives in Westchester County with her husband and kids. Westchester is a bit more, they have more money. All right. Juror 184 is a 39-year-old man who lives in the Bronx with his brother. He's a social work program supervisor and part-time security guard who has a master's in social work. Now that's interesting. Juror 201 is a 67-year-old man, we're almost done, who has 2 adult kids and works as a logistics analyst. He lives alone in Westchester. And 217 is a 74-year-old woman who works as a treatment coordinator and has a bachelor's in sociology. She lives alone in Manhattan and she does not have kids. Juror 230 is a 57-year-old man who works as a manufacturing architect and has a master's in mechanical engineering. He lives with his wife and kids in Westchester. This juror started as an alternate and replaced the juror who was dismissed over inconsistent disclosures. Okay, that means he's a white guy, 57-year-old guy, because they talked about they did not want to replace the white guy with the black guy. All right, what did I tell you guys? I'm your legal bestie. This is why you guys follow me. Hold on, guys. We got another update. Hold on. You got to see this. We got an update. I told you that the court would instruct an Allen charge to be given. What does this say? That's exactly what it says. Here we go. So the next step tomorrow morning is this. I want to make sure. Oh, Lordy, Lordy. I want to make sure. An Allen charge. And why did it come up in the verdict note? It says, as the defense and prosecution, it says the Allen charge, as I explained, is given when a jury returns and reveals they're deadlocked. The judge will encourage the jury to go back and continue deliberations and try to find unanimity to avoid a mistrial. In this case, it would only pertain to count 1 based on the juror's note. This does not require them to change their vote or to reach a verdict. The defense said it was too early for an Allen charge and want something more subtle is used in the response. And the judge later addressed the defense and the prosecution, saying the government's proposal isn't really an Allen charge, but really just reiterates the jury instructions regarding the duty to deliberate. When the jury eventually entered the courtroom, the judge did not give the Allen charge today. It says, instead, he instructed the jury to keep deliberating, saying, I got your note that you reached verdicts on the other counts, but not one. I asked you to keep deliberating. The reason the Allen charge is a big deal is basically it forces them to literally go around and look at what's the weakest part of each of your arguments. Like you're supposed to go around and state, well, I think the weakest part of why I want to vote not guilty here is such and such. And that helps jurors come to an agreement, allegedly. Allegedly. All right. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right. Who do we have left? Jay, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, there you go. Sorry about that. And then Stephanie, I'll add you. You're next. We got these super chats. I want to make sure I answer these questions. Hold on, before you get started. Oh, Joy, thank you for joining us as a new member. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you as well.
Thank you. All right. And LTD is saying, Bestie, older women may consider that the women victims paid the prices for being famous adjacent. The defense did a masterful job of putting the women on trial as there is no defenses for Diddy. Thank you, LTD. All right. What are your thoughts? There you go.
Oh, Lord. So, to be honest, I really think, of course, I believe we all believe that he's guilty. That's just a given. I'm so sorry about that. It's a given. But I said it from day one. I'm like, okay, well, if the defense have a strong argument about that, okay, well, Cassie, she was what do you want to say? She was down with the she was with the shit.
Down with the freak offs.
Yep, she was with it. Okay, so now that would be a little bit hard because then I was thinking about it, I'm like, that's not gonna work. But then also on the same side, the same token, the state and the prosecutors would have to, I'm thinking to myself, they would have to bring out who else? You got to think about all the celebrities, the people that work with him.
Wait, the celebrities and stuff. What value would it be to bring those people out?
Okay, because all of them that would have been part of the freak offs. Then you got to also think about all of his business partners, the entourage, his security guards.
But what would that have helped to show that they didn't show already?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that, okay, let's say this. Do you think that any one of them is not guilty?
You mean the co-conspirators or Diddy?
Well, we already know Diddy. We're talking about the co-conspirators or anybody else that was associated with Diddy.
The co-conspirators are guilty. Now, I know some people are like, oh, well, if Cassie was a hooker, she should have been charged with prostitution. Again, that's not the way the court system works, but I hear you. Yeah, no, they were co-conspirators, and I do believe that they're going to be charged. But the common sense says you have to take down the head of the organization first, because if you allow the head to continue, the operation will continue. The operation did not continue successfully because a bunch of personal assistants were going to Walgreens, picking up Xanax and distributing it. No.
Right.
In fact, they continued to just switch out the personal assistants who did the distribution or different things, or, the security guards as well, who helped with the bribery. At the end of the day, if you want to stop the conduct, you have to get rid of the head of the organization. And here that was Diddy. So that's why you go after him first, and you don't do it at the same time, because if you do it at the same time like that, you can't get that person to sit down with you, interview with you, and flip on them. And
Which I can understand, because I was thinking about that as well. And you made a great point. But
Mm-hmm.
I also was thinking like, okay, so let's say this with Diddy knowing all of this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the chances? I'm trying to phrase it in the best way. With him knowing
Stephanie, you're
all of
next.
this,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
It's that one question I'm trying to
I'll
get
help
out.
you.
I know you know
Okay,
it.
I'll help you get there. It's fine. With Diddy knowing all of this. Oops. Oh, Stephanie. Okay, I see. Stephanie, you're up. Stephanie, you're up.
Hi, Miss
No, no. Oh,
Symone.
sorry.
Thank you
Sorry.
for
Just give
bringing
me a
me up.
second. Sorry, I wasn't
No,
cutting you
no,
off.
no, you
Sorry.
good.
I saw a backstage note, so I wanted to let Stephanie know that you are up. But go ahead. No, you were finishing your thought. Go for it.
With Diddy
Yeah.
knowing everything that was going on,
Yeah.
would you think? Okay, so let's say what you already said is correct. I'm just having I'm thinking to myself like, all right, well, what if what if everybody that was associated with him, okay? Let's say everybody that was associated with him down to
Mm-hmm.
I think about it this way. Diddy is just pretty much the puppet. He's the face of everything that's going on. He's a great PR guy. He is a great marketing guy. Like let's be honest. He
Okay.
marketed himself for
Thank
years.
you, Shell John, for the super chat. Okay. Yeah.
But
Right. Okay. Land the plane. Land the plane.
right, I'm doing that right now.
Okay. Land it.
If that's the case, then why if you take him down, where is all the other people that made him the way that he was? Let's get
They're
those
dead.
people as
They're all
well.
dead. Andre Harrell, all of them are dead. Those people are dead. No, yeah, no, they're dead. Those people are dead. His mom, her wig. His mom don't need to go to jail. she in that wig. They don't need to go to jail. But I hear you saying that basically he didn't have this didn't happen all alone, right?
Right. There's
Okay.
got to be more than just
There was
that.
better.
You know what I'm saying? It's like the Illuminati. You
Gotcha.
got one person, the puppet, but then you got the
Okay.
rest that's just letting him take the downfall. When you know that not only he's guilty, but y'all guilty.
Okay. All right, Jay. Thank you so much. Stephanie, you're next. But before we do that, I want to just read this super chat. Thank you so much, Rochelle. And Stephanie, and I'm also going to add, hold on, in the background. I think, is Donald still there? Donald's gone. Okay, that's fine. But I'm going to add NYC DNP. But with the super chat on the screen, I just wanted to here we go. The super chat. It says, "Hi Symone, I'm late, but if he's found guilty on the other charges except racketeering, is he required to forfeit his assets to the feds?" Yes, yes, yes. How does the acquiring of assets work? So this is important. All right. So with the acquiring of the assets, if he's found guilty on the other charges, S trafficking particularly, there is a serious seizure requirement on that one. Seizure of the assets. So the government literally would go to different residences and stuff and collect things, but then they would also take financial assets. So they would take his shares of different things. They could auction them. They'll likely auction them literally on the auctioning block. And here's the thing with a pardon, if you were to get a pardon, the pardon would not automatically return any of the assets that were seized. It would have to have specific and special language to specifically authorize that. And it would only apply to those items that have not already been purchased by others. So for example, if someone bought it, if his bad boy stock or whatever stock went up for auction, someone else bought it, and then later down the line, he's pardoned and the pardon says give him his assets back, whatever's gone is gone. So thank you for that question. All right, Steph, what you got?
Hi, Symone. Thank you so much for bringing me up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the charges that they did reach a verdict on, I think sadly all of those are probably going to be not guilty. I just think that it was too quick of a verdict. The only one I think that might stick would be the transportation for Cassie only. I think that anything relating to Jane is just a wash. She was a terrible witness for the prosecution, in my opinion. And then when we move over to the verdict for the RICO, I think there could be two sticking points here. I think because we have that question relating to the distribution, that of course they may be considering, correct me if I'm wrong, the transportation for Cassie. That could be one of the underlying acts for RICO.
Okay.
And then they're considering the distribution as the other underlying act because of the question. And I do think that the judge's instruction pretty much said yes in a very lengthy way. Yes, if I ask someone for substances and they give it to me, yes, that's distribution. And I do think that your assessment saying, hey, the reason why this juror is asking, if you come back with a yes, that's basically going to be juror nullification. I think that was exactly on point, and that's exactly how that instruction is going to be taken, in my opinion. I think the other sticking point of the RICO could possibly be that even if they find that, okay, we have two of these acts, I think possibly they may think that all of these acts did not go towards the advancing of a criminal organization. I think that even if they believe that Diddy did all of these things, they think that he did them to advance
Hit that
his
subscribe,
FO
guys.
or to advance his personal, desires, but they're not going to advance the actual organization, his company. That's my opinion. Thank you so much for all you do, Symone.
Thank you so much. Oh, you guys, before you leave, anyone leave, I need y'all's opinion. Do we want to do a verdict watch online together here? Or do y'all want me to go in the courtroom and, hear the verdict if it comes out tomorrow? I kind of wanted to do it with y'all. Okay. Oh, who had to go?
That's online.
You're what? Online. You said online?
I said online. Let's do online. Okay, it's me.
Okay. Let me know in the chat what y'all think. I'm gonna put up a poll. But yeah, DNC. You're up. Yeah. You're up next. But yeah, hold on one second. I just wanted to say, let me know in the chat, y'all, if you think we should do it online, like a watch online party. I'm still obviously here in New York, or because I enjoy it with you guys versus like running outside and then standing there with, I don't know. So just let me know your thoughts. But Tiffany, thank you for the super chat real quick before you speak, NYC. She's asking, could they have proven 2 predicate acts, but just hung up on checking that guilty count on 1, even though they may have 2 acts to support a guilty? They could, but that would be strange with the racketeering, because that means they agree on the acts that occurred, but I guess that would mean they would disagree on something like the means or the methods, or that it was criminal. All right. Okay. Who do we have? Stephanie, I'll take you down. NYC, and then Gila Khan, if you're ready.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. First of all, huge fan. I love how you analyze, synthesize, and disseminate the law in a way that I feel like most people can't, but it's kind of how I feel like I do for my patients. So I guess the neurospicy is the spice or whatever. I think that part of the problem is I moved up here from Tennessee like 6 years ago, and you lose a bit when you're living here. Like things say it's a blue state, but a lot of it feels real red. There's a lot of corruption, a lot of like it's when you're coming from somewhere you think you're having a logical thought process, the illogical seems to be prevailing all around you and no one's checking them. So I think that with a lot of these people, they are very intellectual. They have a lot of they seem to, or they must have by the degrees, have some ability to do the same dissemination. But I do think that just being here kind of makes your brain a little bit of a wizard. And
gotcha.
And I think the pressure of like they might overthink what they're doing. You make it simple, keep it simple, sweetie, like that kind of thing. The other thing that I really wish had been done better, and I don't feel it's done well at all, was the person they had up there for the medical side. And I don't know who you know, but
Dr. Dawn Hughes. Yeah.
Yeah, and she seems fantastic, but she could have delivered it in more of a way that you deliver to us the information that we need, so much so it's almost a prediction. But like set the stage, and the stage was not being set as far as PTSD, chronic PTSD, what it takes, like all that stuff, all that anxiety, all that fear is in the autonomic nervous system. She could have broke it down like that. It would have been much more easy to
Got you.
understand.
So basically, been more persuasive as the expert. I hear you.
But just by playing on the science of it all, leaving everything else out. Because
Totally.
I mean, I'm not an employee of Diddy. Never would be, never have been. If I see him coming down the street, I'm going to be happy too, because that monster's capable of anything. So until I'm going to have the opportunity to secure myself before he has the opportunity to do so.
There you go.
And it's amazing.
Well, I really appreciate that. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you so much, and I have this fancy in my brain. I love it when you come in. I look forward to your earliest podcast, the latest podcast. It gives me and my nerve spiciness something to do rather than focus on my own stuff. I really appreciate you.
Thank
you.
you
someday. Have a wonderful time in New York City.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, let me add real quick. I have just added Ash McBee. Ash McBee is a former law clerk, which means she has clerked for a judge. Is that correct,
Yes.
Ash? Okay. I also see you there, Julia Khan.
I clerked in the
federal or state?
Yeah, I clerked in the third state. So I was at the circuit court level. So here's what I think.
Appeals court.
Usually when a jury comes, usually when the court comes back, when the jury comes back this fast, it's usually never good. And I think I looked at the RICO instructions. They are quite confusing. It took me like 3 or 4 times to read through it, because here's the thing, guys. If they didn't find him not guilty on any of the other 4 counts, they should find him not guilty on the RICO.
I see what you're saying.
With the RICO. Yeah.
Why is that?
The other 4, because the other counts are part of the RICO scheme. What I think is holding them up is that there are so many different underlying charges of the RICO that they can't agree, or some people may be misunderstanding, like, do we all have to agree on the same things, or that one jury might be the holdout. Sorry, I'm on a walk, so
no, it's
I'm
fine,
out of breath. But yeah.
So do you think?
That's what I think.
What do you think that they're agreeing on?
I think they agree. I think they found him guilty of the 4 under the 5. So all the other counts, I think that they found him guilty on the prostitution. What was the other ones? The trafficking. I think they found him guilty of all those things.
Okay.
I think the issue is
wait. You think they found him guilty of trafficking both Cassie and Jane?
No, I think they probably found him guilty of trafficking Cassie, not Jane, because her testimony at the end was troublesome. Especially because they had those receipts of her saying, "Oh, I want to set it up for your birthday." I think in the minds of a juror, they think that it has to be a continuous, ongoing, I don't want to do this. They don't really understand that you can say yes 99 times, and if you say no that one time, that's a criminal act. It's really hard for juries to understand that. So I think that's an issue for Jane. What I think is holding them up is this RICO, but I don't understand it, because the bribery and the witness tampering are just there. They're clear.
Well, I have to say the bribery is clear as day. But I just started. Hold on, let's see if I can put it right back up. But the defense created reasonable doubt, or arguably they created at least an argument for reasonable doubt with. Hold on, I just started. I had it up. It was regarding corrupt intent. Let's see. I need this to come back up. It said, how can you have the gist was, how can you have corrupt intent? He was simply trying to protect Cassie. And this was a super chat. I'm so mad that I don't have this. It's not showing me now. Oh, there we go. It was, I've got to put this back. Yes. So remember, bribery does have to have a corrupt. Here it is. All right. Cambry wrote, thank you for that super chat. How is it, and hit the subscribe link, you guys. How is it corrupt intent if he was protecting Cassie and making the video disappear? Who said she had a movie premiere? But that's not protecting Cassie regarding her movie premiere. She's getting her butt beat. If she's got a movie coming out and there's a video of her getting abused, I don't see how that helps her. I see how it helps him, but I do see that at the end you can use the words of corrupt intent to then say, what I actually said was, I was surprised they didn't focus on saying, oh no, we made it we got rid of the tape for bad publicity. Initially, I didn't feel like they really hung on to that, but they did in closing. So that very well could be that there. So you think that they're in agreement perhaps on the Mann Act charges for Jane and Cassie, the transportation of them for prostitution?
Well, maybe I think they're agreement on Cassie. I think that Jane was not a great witness, although towards the end and they wrapped it up, she became better. But I think her compliance and her text messages would have cast doubt in the jury's mind about her complicity in the matter. So I don't think juries understand that. Like, I could have sex with you 100 times, but the one time I don't want to have sex with you and you beat me for it and make me do it, that is in fact a crime. So I think juries will be hung up on that. I also think when you talk about the bribery and the reasonable doubt, I could see that, but I think that the prosecution sometimes didn't drive home the point that the video of Cassie being assaulted in the midst of a freak off is the crime in of itself. And so covering up and getting rid of
whooping on somebody during a freak off. Correct.
Right. Is a crime. And so, you can't beat people. And so getting rid of that tape, is covering up of the crime of assault or domestic violence, whatever you want to call it. And they could not prosecute that because the evidence was destroyed. So I do think that the jury is hung up. I think they found him guilty on everything else, and they're hung up on the RICO, because if they did not find him guilty on everything else, the RICO is an open and shut case. The RICO is gone.
I see what you're saying.
So yeah, girl,
because there's so many different aspects of RICO that they could have used and been like, nope. Okay, I hear you. Okay, I got you. Well, thank you so much, Miss Ashman Speak. G, you have been waiting so patiently. Thank you, Ash. I'm gonna pull you down. G, I'm gonna let you go ahead and speak. You ready?
Yeah. Hey, how you doing?
Good. And then PB, I'll add you and Christopher John. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So my first question, can he be guilty? I mean, can the jury all agree on the prostitution, right? And
can they agree on the prostitution? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Unanimous on the prostitution. But not unanimous. Agree that it was not sex trafficking. All of them agree it wasn't sex trafficking.
Correct.
Right?
They can agree that it was not trafficking. Correct. But that it was prostitution.
Right. Then what else? I mean, those two things. And do you understand what I'm saying?
But here's why I'm struggling with that. So for those of you who are like, is Symone slow? Why isn't she getting it? Because those two charges are also under the RICO. And so if they're guilty standalone, those two are sufficient for RICO as well. Those are two predicate offenses.
But what I'm saying, he's not, according to the jury, he's not. This is my hypothesis. But what I'm saying is, he's not charged for. I mean, if he's not found guilty for the sex trafficking, but he found guilty. I'm just using that. Yeah. But he found guilty underneath the RICO for the prostitution, but not.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? One of them they agree upon. The other one they agree upon, but it's not. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Maybe. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Maybe they're saying only Cassie was transported across state lines, but
no, I'm not even saying that. I'm saying, what if they all say she wasn't trafficked? They agree upon that. They don't.
No trafficking. Yeah.
Unanimous. No trafficking.
Okay, got it.
Unanimous.
That was what I thought would happen.
Yeah. Unanimous for no sex trafficking, but unanimous for the prostitution. How you see that?
What I'm saying is that's two prostitution charges, and that's sufficient to prove RICO.
Oh, I see.
As long as you feel there was an enterprise, the only way around it would be they'd have to say no enterprise. Okay, Christopher Jordan, what do you think? What are your thoughts there? And
now I got one more question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question to you also. They were bringing this video at Intercontinental, right? Hotel about when Diddy was stomping on him. And they also asked the judge for that video. I mean, that's testimony about that video, pretty much, right?
Yes.
Now, my question to you is, and I think if you listen to the defense argument on that, maybe they have a little issue about that kidnapping situation when he was just actually grabbing his phone. And Cassie was on that when she was on the stand. She said that Diddy was taking a shower at that time.
Okay.
And she had her clothes on at that time. And also, when they got cross-examined, the security guard said he seen somebody in the room, which you guys said was Jules, right? And he said he looked in the room, it was somebody sitting on the bed, but when he got cross-examined, he said, how can you see somebody sitting on the bed when you first look into inside the room, it's the couch, then you got to go in deeper inside the room.
I remember that.
You can even see the bed.
Yeah, they were claiming that she didn't see nothing.
Yeah, so they're probably looking at that as like, yo. And another thing, why didn't they call Jules to the stand? The prosecution
can't. So here's the hard part. You do that, but in law, the jury is not supposed to question that and ask that question. But they probably didn't call Jules to the stand because Jules may not have been a great witness. There's a variety. Maybe Jules has a criminal record. Maybe Jules is one of the guys who tried to extort her at some point. There are a variety. Basically, they don't want to call all of them. They want to call their best ones. So, but I mean, that's certainly a legitimate question. I was thinking that too.
Yeah. But I also heard from the grapevine saying that Jules said he was not even there. But then again, I had a question there because if that was the case, the defense would mention that. Yeah, you know.
All right, I'm gonna take. Yeah, I'm going to take these next two comments, and then I'm going to give you guys a quick summary of the jury issues so far so that you can put it in context. Thank you so much. So, Chris, what are your thoughts? And then PB?
Well, number one, they're not listening to you, Symone. You keep saying she's being beaten. So when people say, oh, she's texting him, I'm down for the freak offs. If she was vegan and he said he wanted pig feet, she's going to agree to it. So I think people don't understand that. I mean, she almost sounded like Chucky when he was lying in the movie. When he knew he could talk, and then the mother tried to catch him. He went, "Oh, I like to be hugged." So somebody, I like the freak offs. She's lying. If she would have stayed with Ryan Leslie, she probably would have never even done drugs.
Okay.
She did drugs because.
So you're saying you feel that by saying she liked the freak offs, what she meant is she liked making Diddy happy.
Right.
Okay.
Because I saw you on the Don Lemon interview.
Yeah,
and you cringed a little bit when Bill Maher said, hey, she texted him and said she liked freak offs. Okay, if you're being beaten and you say, no, I don't want to do freak offs anymore, Diddy, leave me alone. What do you think he's going to do?
Very good.
I mean, I don't say I've never in my life touched a woman because I'm not going to jail or hell for no woman. So I don't do that. But if you know somebody if they're hitting you, you're going to agree to it.
But also remember, they only need one time to prove coercion, one incidence of the coercion, force, or fraud. One time when she said no for it to be trafficking. I still think mentally, anybody on the jury is going to have difficulty being like, well, you said yes 75 times, but he was supposed to understand this particular no. I think that's a challenge. But yeah.
But I did have a question for you.
Yeah.
Even with Cassie being pregnant, was it good to start with her and set the stage?
Yes, you had to.
Okay, so it's not good to end with the star witness.
No, who else were they going to start with? Jane? If they started with Jane, people would have been confused. I'm a lawyer, and I was in there with not start with the Punisher, but they could have. But I was a lawyer, and as a lawyer in there with Jane, literally for the first 2 days, we couldn't even figure out what is the charge. Like, what is she here for? What is she trying to prove up? So you start with the most viciously treated. I would say to just really bring it on in there, but you could close with her if you're going to gradually get there. The problem was she was the strongest and they knew Jane was the weakest. So it was probably good to keep Jane for later, because if you started with Jane, people would have been like, what the hell is this? And remember, Gina was supposed to be up in there in the middle.
Right.
So Gina was supposed to help prove the pattern. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Christopher. All right, PB, do you have any questions for me? I appreciate you. Y'all hit that subscribe as you're coming on in. We're trying to get to 80K before the end of this. And then I'm going to give a quick summary of the issues so far. So where we're at is the jury has come to an agreement on 4 of the counts. That's counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, but not count 1, the RICO count. We don't know if it is guilty or innocent. What we're talking about is, what do we think it is? A number of people have said they believe that if there is an agreement on 2, 3, 4, those latter counts, that there must be a not guilty somewhere in there, because if there's all not guilty, it would have been easy to find him not guilty of RICO. I don't know. What do you guys think? PB, what's your thoughts real quick?
I don't really know what's going on with the jury. I think that I'm kind of getting stuck going down this rabbit hole, but it's definitely that they can't come to an agreement on two of the charges or the underlying offenses for the RICO.
Okay, like which actually occurred. I got you.
Right, and I think I heard a podcaster or something say, and someone else mentioned something about the drug charges and people not feeling good about that. And my thought is, because people are not thinking about this in totality, they're thinking about it single as a single offense. And the problem with that is it would not be RICO if it was a single offense.
Good point.
The fact that the drugs are involved, to me, that's very significant, because that plays into the part of people's free thinking and will to do certain things.
Yes,
so
yes.
If your employer is giving you drugs all the time and you're engaging in that type of conduct on a regular basis, how could your mind is not going to be thinking freely, and you're not going to be able to distinguish when they're acting on their own free will. So I just think that's very important that people are overlooking, because he may not have been able to get away with as much as he's gotten away with if it wasn't for the drugs.
Okay, the drugs and those things. I hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. All right, you have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to do this real quick. Let me pull her down. Okay, there we go. All right. Thank you so much for this super chat, Sherry. I want to answer this question. Objectively, she says, I think counts 2 to 5 will render 1 guilty verdict, Cassie trafficking, and the other 3 will be not guilty. Hence the RICO charge hang up. There's 1 count. Subjectively, I think it's a 2-2, like 2 not guilty, 2 guilty. Thank you so much, Sherry. This is another important question I want to make sure I answer. Joy Angela, thank you so much for the super chat. It says, if nothing else, how does the jury not see bribery and transportation to engage in prostitution? So what we're evaluating here is that apparently they're in agreement on counts 2 through 5, but for the RICO count, there's not an agreement. That could mean either they're not in agreement on which 2 offenses under RICO occurred, or they're not in agreement that this was an enterprise that was operating, or that the enterprise was operating, but not for a common goal. Those are all elements of RICO, and any one of those, if it's missing, would mean no RICO. But I want to be clear and clarify something to say, how did they not see the bribery charge? Again, the defense's argument on the bribery is, oh, it wasn't bribery. It was an NDA to prevent bad publicity from the video. The prosecution responded by saying, so why did you tell him don't make a bunch of expensive purchases, because you don't want to alert the authorities? The cops would not care if this was just an NDA for, regular stuff. But more importantly, I think putting out there that, like, oh, bribery requires corrupt intent. But then they said, oh no, Diddy was trying to help Cassie and protect her. And don't forget, with Cassie, there was the call, because Eddie Garcia, the guy who got the 100K from the hotel, he said, he went to Diddy and said, well, wait a minute, but what if she tries to file a complaint, a police, complaint? I could get in big trouble. He said, oh, don't worry. She won't do this. She wants this. She wants you to get rid of this. She's got a big movie coming on. Watch, I'll FaceTime her. Diddy then FaceTimes Cassie, and Cassie says, oh yeah, I've got a movie coming out. I don't want this to get out. So a juror who wants to free Diddy could rely on that and say, I don't want to see the bribery. Now, secondly, the transportation to engage in prostitution. I'm just going to put right back up on the screen really quickly. It's actually right here. I want to put this back up. This is all that's required for the transportation for prostitution. So maybe this is where the guilty verdict came in. Now, this is not from the Diddy case. I'm your legal bestie attorney, Symone. Thank you for tuning in with us. We are summarizing what the heck is going on with Verdict Watch and why it could be that these jurors can't agree on count 1 RICO, but were able to agree on counts 2 through 5. What I have here, these are jury instructions for the Mann Act, which is transportation across state lines for SEX. These are coming directly from the R. Kelly case that I pulled for you guys. He was charged with the same thing. This one right here is related to an adult. So there are no minor differences, literally. So here are the only 2 things. It says, in order to prove the defendant guilty of transporting an individual for the purposes of engaging in illegal activity, the government must prove each of the following beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that I'm going to put in Sean here, that Diddy knowingly transported or caused the transportation of Jane or Cassie in interstate commerce as alleged in the indictment, and that the defendant transported Jane with the intent that he would engage in actual activity with Jane, and that for that actual activity, a person could be charged with a criminal offense, as in they could be charged with prostitution. In other words, the actual activity that she was engaging in could be seen as prostitution. I say that to say it seems pretty. Oh, we've not reached 80K yet. Y'all hit that subscribe, hit that subscribe. If that's all you need for the Mann Act, which is the transportation for across state lines, that may be where they have an agreement. What do you guys think? Because technically, even though I did feel that Jane's testimony was a little wonky, Jane also satisfies that. She was transported across state lines for sex. And we know he gave her an allowance for her sex. So she was really getting money. It says, all right, so that's kind of this, that is the summary to answer that super chat question. And I really appreciate that there. Hold on, let me go back and get the, oh, we got some more super chats I need to get updated on. It says, yep, it says objectively, we got these 2. Hold on. It says, cut the ish. These jurors understand just fine. These people are as smart as anyone. They made their own executive decision to reject RICO in the interest of justice. Hate it or love it. Well, thank you, JR. Thank you. Okay, I hope I read it in his exact voice. All right, super chat. How does the government take your assets on a mistrial? They don't. If it's a mistrial, well, let me clarify. If it's a mistrial is only related to the areas they couldn't agree. If there is a conviction on the S trafficking allegations, then they can take assets for related to S trafficking. That would be houses. That would be stuff like that because he flew them there. That could be his jet. He flew them on the jet. He flew them to his home. They had freaks offs at his home. So they would only be seized in relation to the convictions. All right. So it says, I think I got this one, Symone. That they are guilty on all and have picked 2 predicates in the RICO, but then have more than 2. Let's say they're split on a third or more. That could happen too. Actually, thank you, Montrella, for that super chat. Yeah, that could happen. Surely they could be stuck on additional ones, but yep, that would still be stuck. But no, then you would just check proved or unproved. You put unproved because all 12 of you can't agree. But then you would just check guilty up top. So if you got 2, the answer should be proved. Thank you for that super chat though. All right. One other thing real quick I wanted to share with you guys. Wait a minute. Listen to this. I want to do a quick summary. I'm your legal bestie attorney, Symone, and we are breaking down what went on today with the jury's verdict. The jury came back and said they have a verdict on counts 2 through 5, but not count 1. Let's summarize the notes. Here's what you need to see. Here, I'm going to share this one. I want you to see the notes so far. There we go. That have been shared with the jury. And then from that, there's a little legal analysis that I want to give you my thoughts on. Here we are. So it says, this is just a quick little summary of the notes from the jury. It says, today, the court began Court began with the jury sending more notes to the judge. The latest was a note asking for several transcript sections, including Cassie's testimony regarding the Intercontinental incident. It sounds like they may be trying to evaluate whether that incident could be the one incident of force where she said no. That would be sufficient to find trafficking. It says prosecutors and defense went back and forth on disagreements about what testimony excerpts are responsive to the jury's request about the hotel incident. But ultimately, the judge ruled that the jury will get the transcripts for Ventura's testimony about the days before and days after the incident. Over an objection from prosecutors, the judge also ruled the jury would receive Ventura's testimony regarding her Instagram post in response to the release of the Intercontinental surveillance video. Let me tell you why that is critical. Because in Cassie's post about the Intercontinental video, Cassie called it domestic violence. Cassie called it domestic violence. But here's the thing. Two things can actually be true. And I was surprised I did not hear that from the government. It can be domestic violence and it can also be trafficking. If you beat your wife and then take her across state lines, or you won't let her leave and then you then make her do a freak off, it's still whooping your wife. It's still DV, but now it's also trafficking. So what it sounds like there is, wisely for the defense, they said, make sure the jury sees where she herself called it domestic violence. What the defense is trying to do is to make juries think that domestic violence is not trafficking, and that's simply not necessarily true. You can have both at the same time. Also, it says by saying that they wanted transcript sections about before and after the Intercontinental, it sounds like the jury is trying to decide whether that incident, the Intercontinental incident, should be considered an act of force under S trafficking. That could be the one that gets Diddy hung up on, found guilty. It also, there were no provided scheduling scenarios. So the other update is during a meeting with the defense and prosecution, the judge agreed to hold off on proposing scheduling scenarios to the jury. Those are scenarios where they tell the jury, like, hey, if you can't come up with a decision by this time, you can come in, on the day before a holiday or what have you. He doesn't want to do that because he probably doesn't want to force them into thinking that, or to force them in a way that would make them think about, oh God, I'm going to have to be here over the holidays, and then make a hasty decision. It also says both defense and prosecutors agreed they're open to letting the jury deliberate on Thursday if the panel chooses to do so, if they want to, even though the court is closed. The judge and the parties are not considering Friday, though. So if the jury declines to deliberate on Thursday, then that means the next time to return would be Monday. There's also a family focus. It says the court began and ended with interactions between Combs and his mom before leaving with Marshall's and Janice. He told her to relax and it's going to be okay. Then after the jury was dismissed and before Combs left, he reiterated to his mother, it would be all right. The jury continues. All right. And then we've got, of course, we know what the racketeering charges, we know the underlying, but the main racketeering challenge, hold on, here is that, I want to go. Okay. We got the criminal enterprise. That may be where they're hung up, that the enterprise affected interstate commerce. We know that the defendant was associated with or employed by the enterprise. Yeah, he was associated and he engaged in a pattern. That would be the pattern of racketeering activity, and then participated in at least 2 acts of the racketeering. So again, the pattern is supposed to be multiple different things. Again, that could be where they're hung up. The minimum sentence for racketeering varies, but here we go. I want to show you this part. It sounds like if they're finding, basically in summation, with the jury being hung, if there's a mistrial, it would only be regarding RICO, whatever the result is for the S trafficking and the Mann Act transportation for Jane and Cassie, whatever those results are, would stand. Now, if those are guilties, there is a chance, yes, if the Mann Act, he likely won't have many assets seized. But if it's trafficking, for sure, he will have to deal with getting assets seized and his empire could be crumbling. But most importantly, it's important to note that with those separate charges, those are only prostitution for Jane and Cassie, not the male hookers. As I was previously saying, the male hookers, I actually thought was the strongest proof under the RICO, but they're focusing on Cassie. Okay, sorry about that. Now, I got you. Who do I have left? Juju, you ready? Okay, we got some people that run. Juju and Orange Moon. I think I see. Oh, there we go. Let me know your questions in the chat.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hold on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, so I agree with you. It seems like, unless it's a question with the enterprise, that they should find them guilty, at least on the prostitution and sex trafficking. And my own thought was they should at least try to find them guilty on the beating at the Intercontinental Hotel, but
I thought so
he
too.
lived in LA, and so did Jules. So that's not sex trafficking, is it?
Say it again.
So the beating was in LA, right?
Yes, it was.
Cassie lived in LA.
Okay.
So that's not sex trafficking.
Because it didn't cross state lines.
Yes.
Okay,
So
I see that argument.
I think that's why they asked for the transcripts from that when she testified about the Intercontinental, and they also asked for the transcripts about that film festival. I have to look at that.
Thank you so much. Okay, hold on 1 second. Thank you so much. Someone did send me the jury charge, and I truly appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you immensely. And I'm going to share that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Jury charge. Okay. Thank you so much.
And when you look at the specific jury instructions, like I think like the trafficking is on like page 40 something. You know, it says it has to prove it gives the 3 instances that they have to prove. And so if everybody, you know how the prosecution said it could only be if they just prove 1. And everybody's thinking, oh, the Intercontinental Hotel. Well, if she was already in LA, that's not sex trafficking.
So let's go. Okay. So you're talking about the trafficking charge?
Yeah.
Or you're talking, okay. Count 2. Okay.
So
I'm on the page for that. I'm looking at that. Committed trafficking of her by force. Count 3 charges. Count 4. Okay. Count 2. We're going to do count 2. Let's put count 2.
Oh, well, what page are you on?
I'm trying to find it, and then I'm going to share it to you guys. Okay, we got racketeering. Count 1.
42.
It's 60 pages, y'all. Just to let you know how challenging this is. I'm going to put it up for.
Yeah, go to page 42.
Lord have mercy. All right, we're going to share.
The bottom of 41 talks about counts 2 and 4.
There we go. There we go. Which page?
So go to 42.
Okay.
So when it talks about the elements of sex trafficking, you see where it says first, second, and third. The government must prove each. It's not that they have to prove one or the other. They must prove each.
So see that. There we go.
You see it? So even myself, I thought if nothing else, they're going to get them on the Intercontinental video.
Sure. That's something.
But if she lived in LA, that's not sex trafficking.
Okay, let's see. Yep. 2, count 2,
So go down to 42,
42.
and then at the top,
first recruiting into number 1 by force Friday. First, the defendant knowingly recruited, enticed. Okay. Second, he knew or recklessly disregarded the fact that force, fraud, or any of those combos would be used to cause her to engage in a commercial S act. And third, that it was in or affecting interstate. In or affecting interstate or foreign commerce. Got you, because they were living there at the time. They were definitely living there at the time. in or affecting interstate commerce. Well, but they're trying to, the baby oil significance, they actually said this in closing, is that the baby oil was part of the interstate commerce. So them using the baby oils and stuff like that would be sufficient to satisfy affecting interstate commerce. I'm going to say a juror is going to call BS on that.
Yeah, and it says they have to prove each. So it's not like you could prove the first and the third. You have to prove the first, second, and third.
You're right. You are.
And did she, after he made her go back to the room, I can't remember, did she engage in sex again?
I don't know. She ultimately left. So no, I don't think so.
Exactly. So if everything was good in the beginning,
have to be you're right, but it doesn't have to be a completed act. They said that like the actual X doesn't have to be completed. All right. So it's like, in other words, you're saying they could be reading this element for her to say they have 1 and 2, but they don't have 3 because the intercontinental incident itself wasn't part of interstate. We don't know where was Jules? Was Jules
he lives from LA. He's from LA, if I remember correctly.
He's a local joker. They didn't even fly him in. Got it. So
that's enough reasonable doubt.
The only thing brought in was that, but that would be, again, they'd have to decide that was the only one. And that would mean they don't feel that the blackmail to her mother or any of those, threats of blackmail took place either, because those could satisfy it too.
That's true. And that's why I'm having trouble on the RICO. But you did say something earlier, and I don't know why, but like, let's say they agreed on 2. Wouldn't that be acceptable to say, okay, they have found, they all agreed on at least 2 predicate acts?
Yeah.
Or do they literally have to go down and agree on all of them? I thought it was just
they have to agree. No, all 12 have to agree on which 2 occurred. And all 12 have to agree on which of the 2 events occurred.
Okay.
So that might be a challenge.
Okay. But that's my 2 cents.
Go for it. Yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I definitely appreciate you sharing me the jury charge, the jury instructions. All right. I may do a separate video highlighting some of that. All right. Go ahead, Joanne.
Thank you for having me. I actually want to speak to what the other caller was talking about in terms of the sex trafficking. There's a misconception that trafficking is the same thing as transportation, and it's not.
There is. That's
it's
huge.
not. So while sex trafficking often has an element of transportation, the transportation is not required for it to be considered sex trafficking. Technically, the trafficking part of it is the exploitation, coercion, or lack of consent that's involved. That's what makes it sex trafficking. And
That's
it is a bit confusing because when you hear trafficking, you think of traffic movement, you know what I mean? But that's not actually a requirement for it to be sex trafficking. So I just want to
thank you. And I put on the screen, these are the elements from Diddy's own jury charge of the counts to for transportation with intent to engage in hookers. Okay. These are the elements. First, that the defendant knowingly, I'm going to say Diddy knowingly transported one of these ladies in interstate or foreign commerce, that he intended that they would engage in an act of prostitution. I could see there being a problem there, an act of prostitution, because if you see them solely as his girlfriend, you may not see it as an act of prostitution.
Right. But I think part of that is something I've just noticed throughout this whole trial is there's a lot of like closed-mindedness when it comes to a lot of these terms. When you think of trafficking, grooming, DV, it's like people have in their mind how these things look. And so when it looks a different way, it's really hard for them to kind of wrap their mind around it.
I agree. And I think throughout almost every single charge in this case doesn't look like what an average juror would have thought, or even it didn't look like what I thought. The kidnapping, I did not expect her to say she got kidnapped 5 days in a row and they took her home and picked her up the next day for work. I didn't expect her to say, she went to the napping with Kid Cudi's house and then, showed up to work on Monday. I did not expect the forced labor to be the essay on Mia, as well as I don't know what the hell else it was. And I definitely, like, for the trafficking, we were all expecting there was going to be some laced alcohol, laced substances, The baby oil had something in it, any of those types of things. And we just didn't see those things. So I think, especially when there was all this media hype, you're going to be expecting just, Marilyn Manson out here, just some crazy, wild stuff. And that's not what we've got. You're right.
I mean, when you
Thank
think
you for
of
that.
kidnapping, absolutely. I mean, when you think of kidnapping, you think, oh, someone's got to hit you over the head and throw you in the van. But it can also look like, oh, you willingly get in the van thinking that you can willingly get out, and they let you know you can't get out. You know what I mean? When it comes to, sex trafficking, I mean, people think, oh, yeah, they got to move you around and put a bag over your head. No, it can look a lot of different ways. So I just encourage all of us to just keep expand our thinking when it comes to these things.
Smart. Yeah,
because these things don't look just one type of way. Even when it comes to domestic violence, people think, oh well, if it doesn't look like this, then is it really, they question the legitimacy of it, when these things they exist in many different ways. So I want to thank you for that. And also I just wanted to ask you, like, based off of the verdict now, what do you think the outcome will be? Do you think because personally I think that he's not going home, thankfully, hopefully. But in your opinion, what do you think?
For me, there was a big shift. There was a big change when I learned from the jury charge that the hookers were that the prostitution across state lines is only for Jane and Cassie. I think that was a huge mistake. So that was the one charge where I thought he's going to go for this because what's the excuse? So now, as I'm looking at it, it's on the screen here. I think from this jury charge, the issue that it quote states what engaging in prostitution is the practice of an instance of engaging in actual activity for money or its equivalent. When you're dealing with girlfriends, I think he could get off on that one too. So now I'm not so sure anymore, right? Because I definitely thought that they would hang on certain, not guilty, but straight up hang, that they knock down, drag out, straight up disagree. Now, unless the prostitution across state lines charge under the RICO includes the male hookers, if they're not getting it outside, I don't see how they would get it inside of RICO versus outside of the RICO count. And that's where I'm
to me, it was always clear that it was never the guys engaging in the prostitution. It was the girls. So, and that just doesn't even make sense. And that's what I kept questioning. I'm like, how were they? They were the girlfriends.
Right.
And then in reading this, and these instructions are very narrow. If people look at these instructions verbatim, I think he's going to get not guilty. I think they're just trying to figure out some of the things in the RICO. Like even with the enterprise, one thing it says in there is that the enterprise was from 2020 or 2004 to 2024. It makes it read as if there were no gaps in any criminal activity. That I mean, it leaves a lot of loopholes open. I think he's going to get off.
I do want to speak to the RICO of it all. Honestly, I think the RICO has been proven quite clearly. I think that when it comes to enterprise, meaning a business or a company, he very clearly used his company, used his employees to do crimes.
But you got to look at how this thing is worded with the judge instructions. Like you would think so, but when you look at these judge instructions, it makes it look a little different.
Well, I'm just speaking on the law in general, now whether or not the instructions might confuse the jury and they might, decide what they decide. That's, I feel you on that one, but I'm just meaning just based off of the law, it's very clear that he was using company employees to do criminal activity. That is RICO. That is in of itself RICO. And I think that people just don't understand RICO. And they already want him to be innocent. People don't want to see Diddy locked up. They, that's their guy, take that, all of that stuff. So it's like, I think people are finding reasons to not see what is clearly there to me. But thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. All right. I am, let me see who else we got. Okay. Thank you. Juju, you already spoke. All right. So we got Be More Cutie. Okay. We're going to do, Cam, Be More, and then Felicia. And I just want to share this. Y'all, before I go to you, this is really interesting. I want you guys to, I want to make sure you see this part. I'm your legal bestie, attorney Symone. We are summing up what was going on with the jury today. They have come to an agreement on 4 of the counts 2 through 5. They can't agree on the RICO. And so we are all taking our wild guesses as to what it is that they agreed to with the 2 through 5. Now, 2 of the acts in 2 through 5 are transportation to engage in prostitution and inducement, correction. That is actually one of the underlying RICO offenses. And this is what I want to read this part to you guys. So, because my question is this: is there anywhere in the instructions that would allow them to find him guilty for hiring the male hookers? Because I feel like, to the extent people feel Cassie and Jane were consenting, the male hookers, it's not even about consent. It's just about the prostitution. So let's read this part. I want you to be clear on this is under RICO for the prostitution. He states, the judge says, first, that a conspirator knowingly persuaded or induced or coerced a person to travel in interstate foreign commerce, that said person did travel in that way, and that third, the conspirator acted with the intent that the person would engage in prostitution. The government must prove that the conspirator knowingly persuaded or induced or coerced an individual to travel in interstate or foreign commerce. It's done knowingly when it's done purposefully and intentionally. As a second element, interstate and foreign commerce simply means movement of goods and services and people between any 2 or more states. So, yeah, for the intercontinental, that may not be the case since they live in LA. As to the third, that the government need not prove that prostitution was the sole purpose in encouraging them to cross state lines. A person may have several reasons or motives to do so, but the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt a significant or motivating purpose of encouraging individuals to travel across state lines was that these individuals would engage in prostitution. In other words, the conspirator's intent was that the individual engage in that prostitution, the conspirator's intent that the individual engage in that prostitution may not have been merely incidental to them flying in. In other words, that was the goal, was the freak off, for example. The intent of the individuals who traveled or engaged in the activity is not the issue. So, for example, it doesn't matter if the hooker wanted to be a hooker. All right, but fast forward. That's it. All right, well, who are the damn people? Hold on. I want to see. We got distribution, blah, 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 blah. Tell me, who are the damn people for this conspiracy, whatever, conspiracy, narcotics, RICO, constituent trafficking. That's it. They're not even clear on who these goddamn people are. Yeah, maybe it is just the girls. All right, let me get our next caller. There we go. Whoever's ready. Juju, thank
Hey
you. I will
guys.
look at page 14. Hey, come on in.
Hi. So actually 3 things. What you were just reading, was that the um prostitution with the
Under RICO.
okay. Oh, okay, under RICO. So that was not for the sex trafficking.
Mm-mm.
That was for the prostitution.
Correct. Under RICO.
Okay. All right. The other thing that I was thinking, as I was listening to this case, I did not hear a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship.
Mm.
When you are talking about making someone have sex with sores, when they're on their cycle, yeast infections, whatever other infections that she contracted, forcing her to have sex with these escorts without protection. She overdosed or almost overdosed during a freak off, and she got back up and then forced her to then continue to participate. It sounds more like a pimp hoe relationship.
Mm.
So,
Okay.
with people being confused and saying like, "Oh, well, sex trafficking can't participate with a girlfriend," I feel like it didn't sound like a boyfriend girlfriend relationship. Didn't sound like someone
Got you. I
that you
follow you.
genuinely love. It sounded like someone who you are utilizing in order for you to be able to get whatever satisfaction you needed, which is why we are here today, right?
Right.
As far as the RICO, I do feel like others said, that the RICO was very easily proven. Also, we know that KK had Jane transporting drugs. We saw the text messages, or they had the text messages in regards to that. KK also, I believe there was a text message where KK was asking Diddy if Paul was going to be coming in. So she was fully aware of what was transpiring, which I believe also proves that, yes, there are co-conspirators that are
Right.
participating in said acts. I don't know why it is. Honestly, I'll tell you what I really honestly think. I think it's very difficult for people to be able to acknowledge that these things are illegal acts, because it looks too similar to things that they do every day. And I think that, I can't recall what the statistic was, but I think they said the average American commits one felony a week. Like, there's a lot of
wow.
things that we do that we don't know is necessarily
True.
illegal, but based on the letter of the
True.
law, if it's not legal, we kind of have to acknowledge that, yes, these acts are things that really shouldn't be transpiring, and maybe just reevaluating how we handle each other. I think that's
Fair
what this
enough.
case is really showing, is that, a lot of the things that we have been participating in, and things that people have been doing that we have been passing off, we can't do it anymore. It's got to stop.
Understood. All right. Thank you so much for that comment. And that was, I want to make sure, it's so small on my end. That was Cambry. Was that Cambry?
No, it's Be More Cutie.
Be More Cutie. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, Cambry, you ready?
Yeah, I'm here. You hear
All
me?
right. Yeah. Before you join on, I gotta comment on this super chat that I got. It says, LLC says, would it be possible for him to get off on these trafficking and RICO charges, but be charged for different instances, or is that double jeopardy? Now, anything they got, they would have needed to bring in this case. If it's I don't know if he unalived somebody or something, they could get him later. But yes, just to answer you, they can't add any of the others. It says, Will Wallace, thank you for the super chat. I feel bad for Diddy's kids and fam. It'll never be the same for them. I also feel really bad for Cassie's parents and family. She'll never be the same. Dude effed up for real, for real. This could have all been avoided. You're right. Lydia says, thank you for that super chat. Would any of the predicates or charges, statute of limitation of each other, be an issue as to why they can't agree on RICO? Is anything about that in the jury instructions? Yes, actually there is. Hold on. I'm still showing, I think I'm showing them on the screen. Let me just pull it up. Hold on. The statute of limitations is wonky. I was thinking the same thing. Hold on. All right, for RICO, it says count one has a 5-year statute of limitations. Therefore, you got to decide whether the conspiracy charged in count one continued after September 12th of 2019. Remember, Cassie's Beattown was 2016. It says a conspiracy ends when the objective of the conspiracy have been achieved, or when all members of the conspiracy have withdrawn from it. However, a conspiracy may be a continuing conspiracy and lasts until there is some affirmative showing it has ended, or that all members have withdrawn. A conspiracy may be a continuing one if the agreement includes an understanding that the conspiracy will continue over time. Basically, what this is likely also pertaining to, so that's an excellent question. Thank you for the super chat. They may be struggling with the statute of limitations because the worst of the offenses, right? In the clearest, the bribery, for example, that happened in 2016. And then if they're going to say, all right, it was a bribery and it was the trafficking of her by the hotel incident, that also was 2016. And then they may not feel that therefore has continued into the present. Now, certainly with Cassie, the actions didn't go beyond September 12th, 2019 with Cassie, because they broke up in 18. She was married by 19. So I could see how that timeline could be an issue for a juror. The way that they would get in past 19 is they would have to then find him guilty of what was the jury question about? The note was about distribution of substances. Distribution of substances is one of the one of the few crimes that was continuing to this day, as well as, of course, the transportation for hookers across state lines. Either of those would bring him and the conspiracy into the present. So excellent question. I hope I answered it for you there, because I think you're onto something. All right, let me just see if I can get one more question here. Video, witness tampering, bribery, the jury needs a Cliff. Thank you for the super chat. But hey, I got to be clear with you guys. As far as the witness tampering goes, I was so adamant because I thought the witness tampering pertained to the hotel workers in that they made the video go away. It does not. It pertains to Mia and Jane. And so I changed my mind about that. I actually think it's a weak charge. The witness tampering was like paying Jane's rent. And for Mia, it was the phone calls by D-Rock to try to get her on the phone. So I'm going to have to say those were weak. All right, ladies and gentlemen on the phone, what you got? As I look through the rest of these jury instructions. Like the video, y'all. Hit that subscribe.
Yeah, Symone, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so first I wanted to talk about the R. Kelly stuff.
Okay.
So as far as the charge that he had crossing state lines with his girlfriend, the unlawful act wasn't prostitution. It was Georgia Code 16560, which is knowingly giving someone an STD.
That was one of them. Okay. I thought there were others because that was my former client. So I follow you totally. Okay.
Yeah. But as far as this case goes, I think one of the issues we have is there are people who believed he was guilty
before we started.
So when you don't have to prove anything. So when people say, oh, it's definitely RICO, it's definitely trafficking, they're coming from the wrong perspective. These jurors are coming from the perspective of the government has to prove this.
Yeah.
And what they're working with is evidence. They can't assume that Jules was in the room if they don't have evidence that Jules was in the room. They can't assume that Puffy was beating Cassie for 11 years if they don't have evidence of it. What happens?
But if Cassie testifies Jules was in the room, they can choose to believe her.
Right, they can choose to, but then what were the judge's instructions on the testimony if they didn't believe them? If they have reason not to believe them, what'd you say?
I said it's totally their choice. That it's their
If
choice.
they have reasons not to believe Cassie because she may have perjured herself, or maybe they believe Mia perjured herself and Cassie was in agreement with Mia, which is the whole situation with the bruises and the beating on the balcony. Once Mia lied about that, everything kind of fell apart because Cassie and Mia were conspiring on that issue. And and when people said, okay, well, maybe Mia just got the date wrong, when the date proved that Diddy and Cassie were in New York.
Oh, no, you're saying Mia, but you mean Brianna Bongolan.
I'm sorry, Brianna. Right. I'm sorry, Brianna.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they could.
The thing is that Brianna also had bruises. And the metadata on the bruises show the date that Brianna said. So now, if the bruises did occur, how did she get those bruises?
But couldn't it be that the pictures were from later on? Like
no,
not
the
the same
pictures
day?
were from the date that she said she got held over the balcony. But when she was held over the balcony, him and Cassie were in New York. So
I disagree. I hear that's a factual thing. The reason I disagree on that specifically is because there were text messages, like Cassie had texted KK about the incident and they communicated right when it happened. In addition, somebody named Rob Holiday had contacted Brianna to try and help her and convince her to settle. There were a variety of different things that happened. I think that she doesn't remember the date. And I have a personal example because I just did a deposition for something and they asked me how much was this item that was a part of the deposition? How much was it worth? And I told them a number. Well, I only know the value based on an appraisal that I had obtained, but the number that I said wasn't what was on the appraisal. It was just like, I got my numbers mixed up. I said that it was like 69K was supposed to be 89K, whichever. Now they could later be like, oh no, you said this other number. Must be what it is. But the truth is I don't remember the actual number separate and apart from any document. So if you told me that my picture was this date, I might be like, oh, okay, then this must have been when it happened. When in reality, this could be a copy of a picture, a variety of things. So anyway, but I see how at the end of the day, it was great lawyering from Nicole Westmoreland, and I could see how absolutely Mia lost credibility. And then,
but here's my question to you: as you're looking at a juror who is presuming him as innocent, and they see that Brianna has bruises, they're gonna question if it happened at a later date or at another date, right? Which was like it had to be after the 29th from when they finished up in New York. Where did she get the bruises from? And what reason do you have to lie?
I think it just happened earlier than the date. So like if she said the 26th, I think it may have happened on the 20th or Sunday, and then Diddy went to wherever he went.
Right,
that's my thought.
The conversation from when when Cassie got the text that it happened was a later date.
Okay. All right. I follow you. I hear you, sir.
Yeah. But overall, that's just my thing, is that people are coming into this with Diddy did something throughout his career, so he's got to pay the crime for this.
Yeah.
So, but it just doesn't work like that for the jury. They can't come into it with those kind of biases. They have to, he has to be proven, and that is the government's job, is to prove that. And we all should expect our government to be able to prove that and not come in with a frivolous case. They needed Jane Doe. Yeah, they needed Jane Doe in order to get the 5-year statute. She was a horrible witness. That's by everyone's account.
Jane to get the 5-year. Okay. Okay. I'm following.
Well, they needed Jane and Gina, but Gina didn't come in.
Okay. To have to show the trafficking pattern continued.
Right.
Past the days. Okay. I follow you.
That's what the Jane Doe is where the case failed.
That makes sense. Because I mean, the substance distribution and some of the other things could have gotten it there too. But no, you're totally making sense. That was excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right. And what was your name again?
Canberry.
Oh, Canberry. Okay. I see you in the chat all the time. I really appreciate you. And I appreciate the super chats. All right. We got a super chat here from Will Wallace. I have to read this. He says, in my opinion, they got dude on trafficking and transportation to engage in hookers. But for Rico, not guilty. That's what he's thinking. They got him under trafficking and transportation. Ooh, but not guilty under RICO. Now, what about the owners of the escort services? Usually the cops crack down on pimps harder than the tricks. Point being, one juror may see bias. All right. Thank you, Will. And then we've got Coco Carney says, if it's a mistrial, do I think they will try all of the co-conspirators together the next go round? I believe they're having a hard time with Rico because he's charged alone. That might not be a bad idea, actually, at this point. Thank you for that super chat and the idea. Whitney D said, thank you. You prepared us well. Shaking my Astroglide. And Kareem says, why are OnlyFans people allowed to do the same thing Diddy and Cassie were doing? They fly people in, and out, and they get paid as the guest, for porn and stuff like that. I think that's a valid question. And I think the answer is it's closely related to the porn industry. But at this point, hell, I guess we got to be careful that they don't get charged with this same type of trafficking as well. If they're beating on people or using force, blackmail, etc. So, all right, who do we have here? The two in here, I think. So thank you, Kareem, so much. All right, we've got, I can't see. Felicia. You ready?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I think personally, if you want Diddy to be guilty, then he's going to be guilty. If you want him to be not guilty, he's going to be now guilty, because there's too many loopholes where people can finagle things the way that they want it to go. But if we are going off of what the prosecution did, that man is guilty.
Hit the subscribe button, guys.
You can come at it from different angles. He's guilty, but I think the problem is some people just don't want him to be guilty. Some people see a black man and don't want to take a black man down. Some people feel like all the stuff that he has done in his past, they want him to be guilty. So I just feel like it depends on the people in the back.
And I do feel that the defense did a very good job of basically saying the government does this all the time to brown people. Don't let them get away with it this time effectively. It was the gist. They didn't use those exact words, but that was like the tone and the innuendo. And I think that that's going to stick with some people because they only need one, and they're very well going to feel like, yeah, they have gotten away with it, and the buck is going to stop here. We got to cut it out.
Yeah, they go off of people's emotions.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And this was, who's that, Felicia?
Yes.
Thanks, Felicia. All right, Diane.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm so excited to at least participate in this conversation. And I agree with what Felicia just said 100%. We are, and no one, please don't get offended. We are an emotional set of people because if we are, there's a tendency for Black and Brown to be marginalized and disenfranchised. So I get it. I get the emotionality. But if we're going with what the law is saying and how it was presented, he is guilty. When I looked up human trafficking, and when you think of by definition, the recruitment, transportation, harboring, or control of individuals through force, fraud, or coercion for labor, services, or commercial sex acts. How can we not agree that he's guilty of that? Even when they played an audio tape of him telling one of them, get on your job. And Cassie said it happened so often that it became her job. And this is why the defense tried, in a very whimsical kind of way. They were in love. They were just two lovers because Cassie clearly said it felt like a job. We cannot, you can't. So, we can play with it like ping pong, but it's all there.
Ping pong.
Yeah, yeah, because that's what's happening, and I know, you're a lawyer. My brother's a lawyer. I started out in the field, but I switched things up. I didn't, I became the different type of counselor. I'm a mental health counselor. And I know this, it becomes word soup. It's so much pages, and it becomes really difficult for people to decide. So I think, of course, this is it. It just takes one person to not really agree. Would you disagree on that?
I would agree. No, it just takes one. You are right.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you for joining us. And listen, I just want to comment, make a comment regarding literally the comment there at the bottom. The jury doesn't want to sentence Diddy to life. They don't know what the sentence is going to be. They're not supposed to know. Of course, they can make their guesses, but they're not supposed to know. They're not supposed to be told. So we shall see about how that goes. But I think you're right. For this, if they knew it was life, I think he'd probably definitely get a not guilty all the way across the board. All right, who do we have left? Let's see. Lisa. And I know I saw you just joined as well, Lisa. Okay, Travis, Stephanie, and Lisa. And then Afra, I'll let you come last. There we go. I was asking earlier if I have time, if I can. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Afra, I saw your point, but about the men not being abused. Okay. I will wait till you we'll let you make that at the end, Afra. Or I can remind the audience of that as well. Travis, you ready?
Yes, ma'am. How you doing?
Good. And I see you too, Lisa. What's up, Travis? What are we thinking this jury is doing?
What I think the jury is doing, I think they're very confused on the RICO. I think they probably got guilty on the prostitution. I think that's probably on the two charges that he's probably gonna what they made a decision, and the other two charges he's probably found not guilty on. But the RICO is kind of confusing and hard for them to convict him on, and that's what I think they're doing.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just wanted to share something with you. So what some of your callers that just was stating about how the government is basically coming up and stacking charges. That's how I'm seeing it. So you're a defense attorney, right? I mean, I watch you a couple of times.
I do both. Yeah, I do both.
You do both. So so now I'm on a criminal case that's similar, but it's like street gang and drugs and all that stuff
Mm.
involved with it.
Are you a lawyer as well?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
I
okay.
was end up getting pulled in the case for nothing.
Oh, oh
Okay,
Lord. I'm
my
sorry to hear
house
that.
got raided for nothing.
Thank
But
you,
as
Canberry.
after I seen the video in the motion discovery, it just the way how they want. If they want to attack you, they
They
gonna
do.
attack you.
They do.
And if they want to bring you down, they will bring you down, even if it's something from your job or rental car or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. They will stack them charges on you. And so, what I feel like they did with Diddy, they painted him in the image with that video. Okay, he was wrong for that. Few, what happened? They painted him as this gang leader and put a bunch of drugs on the news. And once it's all said and done, that same day they put him on the news, the the feds had to take away 6 of his charges out of 2 because they knew they
Oh,
did something crooked. And
oh
I
wow.
proved that with his lawyers that day that he went for his bond hearing, and then all of a sudden all the charges started dropping. And then
Oh
I come to
wow.
find out they had me in the paperwork as only making like 13,000 a year because they knew I was going to make his $500,000 bond. Come to find out, I proved to them I made 200,000 that year,
Mm.
each year. So they saying between all the way from when I worked in the 2023, only made 13,000. And then they put me in a motion discovery stating that they worded it real good, but I caught it. I was at work, and I proved that I was at work, and they knew I was at work because they tracked my phone, they tracked everybody, and they got us on the drones. And when they got us on the drones, they knew I was at work, but they played the game like it wasn't. And that's what I'm seeing in this Diddy case. Yeah, he wrong for DV.
Mm.
He's wrong for DV. But all of this other crap, how the government is painting it, is making me very upset, and people don't understand it.
I'm
That's
so sorry.
why once this ends, I'm going to advocate for some of these laws to be changed in Congress
Wonderful.
because it is wrong. A lot of
All
this stuff is
right.
wrong. But
Excellent.
thank you.
Thank you, Travis. I appreciate you. All right, we have this comment here from attorney ORJ. He says, I believe he's going to be not guilty on the other 4. If the enterprise was the hangup, they would not have questioned the distribution. Ooh, genius point. I wish I had made it earlier. They are trying to find a predicate act for the RICO and they're struggling. That makes sense. And they started with, honestly, distribution should have been the simplest one. So it sounds like if they can't agree on the simplest underlying RICO charges, that could be why they are struggling. Said he's going to be not guilty on the other 4. If the enterprise was the hangup, they would not have questions. They're trying to find a predicate for the RICO. And then Gold Digger says, Symone, Paul was Diddy's employee, Paul the trainer, and he also engaged in the FOs. Diddy used Paul to persuade Jane to do freak offs. Does Paul, being Diddy's employee, go to the enterprise? Absolutely. Excellent point. Excellent point. And thank you for the super chat, Gold Digger. All right. And then we have one more. Oh, JP, I used his voice before. He says, my voice don't sound all angry like that. I'm mad at you now, but still take my money. Say, you think all the lying from the victims is contributing to juror dissonance? I don't think that all the witnesses were lying, but thank you for your super chat and your money. Thank you. All right, who do we have next? We're going to wrap it on up. Ladies, I think they're all ladies. Hold on. We've got, okay, Afra, Stephanie, and Lisa. Lisa hasn't spoken yet. Lisa, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate it.
I think that the jury is. I want to give. I want to give a little more credit to the jurors as to what they are deciding, because I know that it was a lot of their background and how they have to speak things in layman's terms and all. But they were also educated. Just because there's a deli worker doesn't mean that they can't interpret things. So I think that what's
Fair
going
enough.
on is that they are really digging deep and making sure that they are coming up with the right facts. So of course there's going to be struggle, but I want to give them more credit than what they have been given. So
That's fair.
that's what I think. And
Thank you.
with trying to interpret the terms and all, you have people that can't interpret. And no, we're not going to all agree, but there are some things that they did agree on. So that's my point.
Yeah. And I want to clarify, because I've made comments periodically about the deli worker. And I don't think that because she's a deli worker, she's not smart. Specifically, I thought her job and what she did, I also would talk about the warehouse worker, was relevant to the fact that if these are the people trying to evaluate whether Jane's $10,000 a month allowance was coercion, you're going to have a hard hill to climb. That these everyday working people who get up and work hard every day and still may not earn $10,000 per month, right? They're not going to see you receiving that for being on your butt or your back, depending on what day it is or what you're doing. They're not going to see that as a difficulty, as force, as coercion. No, you had a choice and you chose to take your entire allowance and put it towards a house or put it to your rent. You know, you could have done something else with it. But so when I talk about that, I talk about the fact that the way in which this story has been told has not been told to persuade the average American.
Okay. Now, I wasn't speaking to you specifically because I listen to you all the time. So I knew what you meant. Yes, yes. This wasn't thrown off on you. But in the media, you know, they come across like, oh, a deli worker and this and that and layman terms and all. Yes, I agree. I want some of, I'm educated. I want some things in layman's terms as well. But I think that they have found him guilty, but they can't find him on everything. And I can understand that as well, because it hasn't been, a lot of things haven't been proven, but I do like it that they are digging deep. So, yes, thank you so much. And thank you for what you contribute to the community and from what I've learned from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate it. And at the conclusion, I'm going to give some kind of final thoughts.